Welcome to the Grange Podcast, where we strive to rekindle the spirit of community and belonging. Our mission is simple, yet profound, to foster transparent communication and share valuable information that brings us closer together. Join us as we explore stories, insights, and conversations with the intent of building a stronger, more connected community, one episode at a time. Today, my guest is my dad. During our conversation, we talked about all things Christmas. Eric has been one of my most requested guests for the podcast, and I'm glad we finally sat down and made it happen. We had a great conversation, and the timing couldn't have been better. I hope everyone enjoys this one and has a Merry Christmas. If you find value in our conversation, please help spread the word by sharing this podcast with a friend. Don't forget to click on the subscribe button to be notified when a new episode is released. Anyone interested in coming on the podcast can reach out to thegrangepodcast@gmail.com. Thanks for tuning in. Now, here's my conversation with Eric. December 21st, 2012. A Christmas wish to all. December 21st has passed, and I'm still writing this. The Mayans were wrong. Good thing. As Christmas approaches, winter is here. Most lights are up, and I eagerly await the Chia Pet commercials that will replace the political ads that echo in my TV mind. Even though I'm no longer in the business, my internal clock seems to think there is snow I'm required to plow out there somewhere. It's nice to not have to be somewhere on time this morning. A quick look at the online news only has a couple references to Christmas, and both of those are either fundraising or fiscal cliff related. It got me thinking about Christmas. I tend to use and experience the word Christmas in two different references. The first is the recognition and celebration of the birth of Jesus Christ. The second is what we so commonly call the Christmas season or holiday season, if the word and belief in Christ soggies your grape nuts. The Christmas season, typically the month of December, seems to be a pretty universal designation that for me has included historical trimmings such as radiant sweaters, warm handshakes, cold nights, and a lot of fond memories of friends, family, and goodwill. The goodwill is the part that I most enjoy, reflecting on and taking part in during this time of year. Each year, that goodwill results in some really inspiring stories of kindness and giving related to the Christmas season. I have always looked forward to witnessing and participating in these seasonal gestures that are some of my fondest and proudest memories. I wish there was a way to bottle up the joyous frame of mind that we experience, provide, and share in abundance with each other this time of year and put it in the pantry next to the Worcestershire sauce. If we all had Christmas joy stored up on our shelves, we could pull it out and add a dash to our daily lives as needed during the rest of the year. How cool would that be? Imagine being able to preserve the rewarding kindness, patience, tolerance, and selflessness you feel during the Christmas season and being able to shake a few drops onto yourself later in the year when that voice on the other end of your credit card inquiry just doesn't get it right and you're about to go postal. Imagine our local referees, coaches, traffic flaggers, pedestrians, train engineers, and elected officials would appreciate having a few bottles of the stuff on hand and readily available just in case. The ladies at the car tabs office would probably keep it in a super soaker. No doubt, all of our family members would keep a bottle in the guest room, and our co-workers would have one for us to use liberally as needed in the workplace. The stuff would sell itself. You wouldn't even need to market it with "call in the next 2 minutes" or be promised a double-sized bottle or a curly fry maker to get you to have one in hand. I think Christmas joy and goodwill has all the potential in the world to be used the other 11 months of the year. The challenge is remembering that it is readily available, even though there is no bottle to look at on the shelf. All we need to do is look within ourselves. I first became aware of this limited or seasonal usage under the utilization of Christmas joy many years ago during a Christmas trip to Coeur d'Alene. I had taken my crew there for a fun holiday getaway and a chance to experience all the awesome lights, decorations, and great food that Coeur d'Alene has to offer during Christmas. I woke up early on Sunday morning thinking about the brunch we were going to have later and how good it would be. The view over the lake was incredible, and the snow layer was cold enough to have that squeaky sound coming from it when you walked on it. I decided to take a morning stroll on the docks and through the city streets. I wandered into one of the local stores that was just opening up for the day. As I was looking around, I noticed a tree of sharing with a few names left on it. I plucked off a couple of the name cards and couldn't believe what I was seeing. Just a little background here. I've worked with toy acquisition for Operation Santa locally for over 20 years. In that time, I have seen gift requests that you wouldn't believe, but we'll save that for another day. Anyway, as I was looking at the requests from local kids in Coeur d'Alene, I saw wish items like shampoo, toothpaste, deodorant, stuff like that. I was completely puzzled by these requests. I asked the store guy what the deal was, and he just casually said, "Oh, those are Children's Village kids." After a long chat, I figured out that Children's Village was a privately operated home for kids in the Coeur d'Alene area with no other options or places to live. These kids who are residents at Children's Village are taught from an early age how to budget and manage their funds. They are given monthly allowances and are then responsible to provide to a certain extent for their own personal needs. The lesson is that if a kid spends all his or her allowance on movies or CDs, then they are probably going to be brushing their teeth with their finger for the next month. Kids are smart, and I think we often underestimate their ability to reason. Children's Village kids had figured out that for 1 month of the year, most of us are exceedingly generous and abundant with kindness and giving. The result effect for them was receiving the huge Costco-sized triple shrink-wrapped shampoo as a Christmas gift, which in turn freed up their cash flow for other items of their own choosing for the other months to come. For these kids, getting the shampoo and freeing up cash for what they like was a much safer gamble than the possible yellow or green sweater that you or I might get them based on our own sometimes dated tastes. Kelly and I have been supporters of the Children's Village effort ever since. I've never forgotten the deeper meaning and realization of my Sunday morning in Coeur d'Alene when I realized for the first time that exceeding kindness, patience, and generosity in our society can sometimes be all packed into the same month each year, leaving the other 11 months a little starved for the acts of goodness and compassion that make December such a standout. Even little kids in Coeur d'Alene have figured this out. For me, the positive energy that I put into efforts to benefit others come back to me in the form of pride, joy, happiness, and self-fulfillment. These are all great flavors in life that can be enjoyed any month of the year, just like adding a dash of Worcestershire to that hamburger in July or chili in October. Keeping a ready dose of Christmas joy in your hands for the entire year is my Christmas wish for all of you who are my friends and family. I sincerely hope that the joys of season stay with you and yours as you enter into the new year and beyond. I hope the new year brings you lots of shampoo so you are free to spread your other blessings as you see fit on all the people and purposes in your lives that are important and rewarding to you. A good friend of mine once said, "To live in abundance yourself, you must participate in abundance for others." I'm a real believer in this statement, and I believe its meaning was meant for more months of the year than just December. I hope you enjoy and celebrate Christmas and all that it means in abundance for yourself and others. As you move into the new year in the coming months, don't forget where you keep your Christmas time joy and generosity, just in case you or I need a shake or two to get that great flavor back in your life and the lives of those around. In closing, I would like to take a moment to pray for and reflect on our brothers and sisters in the military, our family, friends, and those dealing with hardships. It is my hope that those who are grieving will be surrounded by evidence and true understandings of sorrow, compassion, and loving support of a nation praying for their healing and strength in such a challenging time. My family and I are grateful to all of you for your friendship and being in our lives. We are aware of and thankful for all the blessings we have received this past year, and we know that without all of these blessings, we would be far fewer and way less fun. We are truly fortunate. I wish all of you a very Merry Christmas and all the best to you and yours in 2013. Sincerely, Eric. And that was written by my dad, Eric Weatherman, on December 21st, 2012. I was actually living in Steamboat Springs, Colorado at the time, and was working as a snowmobile guide, and I was on the mailing list for this. My dad had emailed that out, I think, to his whole contact, because there was like 100 people that were CC'd on it. But I've kept this for, what is that, 14 years or so? And I reflect back on it in December, and I think it's a powerful message, and I hope you guys enjoyed me reading it, even though I stumbled a little bit, but it's a great message. And joining me here today on the Grange Podcast is my dad, Eric, and we thought it would be fun. Today is December 22nd of 2025, and we thought it would be fun to record a podcast and talk all things Christmas, which I know that for my dad is his absolute favorite time of year. And he has so many local recollection and history and great stories all around the Christmas spirit. So excited to have him on. And with that, Dad, welcome to the Grange Podcast.
I really appreciate being here. And I was looking for that.
It took me a minute. Yeah.
I couldn't find it. Honestly, something came up the other day that made me think of it, and I thought, I want to send that person that, and I couldn't find it. I'm glad it's still out there. I remembered parts of it, but I didn't remember all of that.
Yeah,
for sure. But no, it's great to be here. I've sure enjoyed watching your podcasts over all the different ones that you've produced. I really enjoy it.
Well, I appreciate that, and it's good to have you here. What year do you think that was that you first saw Tree of Sharing in the children's village?
Oh my gosh. We were in Coeur d'Alene. They have a kind of out where the old dog track used to be. They had a kind of a safety training school out there. And so I took everybody down for some annual safety training and just blended that into a fun weekend, kind of made it a Christmassy deal. But gosh, it would have been in the late 90s.
That was my guess.
Yeah. Probably 97, 98, maybe something like that.
Yeah, that's cool. So we might dive back into that a little bit, but this is kind of this is a fun free-for-all podcast. But as you know, because you've tuned into most of these, I really enjoy kind of taking it back, with my guests. And I guess I got to throw this in there too before we get into this Christmas thing. I do think having you as a guest on the podcast has been my most requested guest from people that I bump into. I can't tell you how many people say, you got to get your dad on. He's got so many stories. And
just to get me on record.
And so what I've told everyone that's ever told me that is I say I'm going to do it, but it's going to be a multi-part podcast because we don't have 12 hours to get it all out. So just for you guys listening, we're going to have Eric back on, and we're going to do Eric's life and business and Kettle Falls and all the things in a multi-part, multifaceted series. But today we're talking Christmas, and in that nature, let's take it back. You got a first Christmas memory? Early on, what makes you, when I say Christmas in your early childhood, what comes to mind?
I guess as you say that, it would probably be my mom, Grandma Weatherman's tree. She was very particular about the tree. It had the old school, bigger, opaque type lighting, and she did the tinsel a literal strand at a time. And the tinsel was the aluminum,
I remember that
fine spaghetti looking stuff that draped over. And she literally did them one at a time behind each little fir branch or Scotch pine or whatever the heck it was. But she was so meticulous about doing all that. But I just remember, even in my early, 3-4 years old, I just remember this beautiful Christmas tree that was just gorgeous.
So it was real.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And it smelled, and you had to add water every so, Mom would make you crawl under the deal with a little pour deal with the long
thing,
spout.
yeah.
And you'd have to add water to it. And
Do you remember getting the tree? Was that a family thing, or was that just something that Grandpa would bring home? Or
yeah, I think he always brought it home. I remember that. And I do remember later, probably when I was 10 or 12 or something, because we'd be out getting firewood or getting something else anywhere hunting. And he'd say, "Oh, that'd be a good one." And so we'd go grab a tree. But I only remember a few of those. I don't know if we were tree lot people or if he had something staked out, or I'm not sure.
Did she do live trees even in the later years?
Almost always.
That's what I remember too.
I don't think I ever knew Mom to have a fake tree.
Yeah.
I guess, and why I think that is because I always remember having to go take the old one out and then put it out by the garbage can and,
Yep.
or haul it off or something. But yeah, she would leave it up till it was just about Charlie Brown looking.
Yeah. So how old were you? All of my memories of Grandma were on the house at Ivy, which is kitty corner of the cemetery. So how old were you when you had your first Christmas in that house?
So we had it's kind of a two-phase deal. So probably, 0 to 4, then we moved to Wyoming for a year and a half. But I think the way that year and a half lapped, we did 2 Christmases in Wyoming because I remember both of those. And that's when our family and the Kaiser family moved to Evanston, Wyoming to start up a sawmill for the same sawmill operator that both Howard and Dad worked for here. So we did that. So we were in that house. And we then moved to Wyoming, did a couple Christmases there. When we came back, we landed in Marcus for a year. So I went to first grade in Marcus. And then sometime between first and second grade, we moved back to that same house again.
Oh, wow.
So
I didn't know that was a double.
Yeah, it was. There was kind of a two-phase deal at that house. So some of my first Christmases I remember there. And then, almost all of them except for, I don't remember a Christmas at Marcus, I guess.
Yeah. So almost all your Christmas memories are at that house.
They are.
Yeah. So what was the tradition then? Was there a Christmas Eve dinner?
Yep.
And was that at that house or?
No, that was Christmas Eve was always at my Grandma Mary's, which was
between Kettle and Spanish Prairie?
No, out across the Caldwell Valley, Oakshot Road, out past Farm Jam, a little further west where that road comes to a T and you have to kind of go left or right. And that her house was the big white farmhouse by the red barn.
You've showed that to me before. Yeah.
And that was, that if you said what's one thing that is Christmas, that house.
Why is that?
It was that one time a year that all of, almost all my cousins were older, Cole and Donnie and Lori and Gail, and then Steve and Rick and Mike and Judy. And, I so idolized all my older cousins. They were all great people. And they were all my heroes. And so I loved being out at Grandma Mary's, and everybody was, wearing nice clothes, and Grandma Mary had all this food, and it was just all that cheer and happiness and joy. I just remember how big that was to me to see everybody and just kind of be able to blend in with all of that good stuff. And even my uncles, the fathers of my cousins and then my aunts, and, everybody's glad. Oh, Eric, tell me, and everybody, it was just that coming together, I think, of all the people and all the joy that created out there. And that house wasn't that big. I don't know. I look now and say, how did you get that many people in there? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how she did that, but somehow we were there. Yeah.
What was the spread? What'd the food table look like?
I know we had all the traditional things, the turkey and the traditional stuff. Grandma had kind of a porch that was a screened in porch, but so it was cool. It was outside temperature. And she had a couple deep freezes, I want to say, out there, and maybe some shelving or something. And that's where the desserts would be. And I remember always, as everybody was doing the introductions and hi and how are you and the hugs and the everything, I would kind of slither through the crowd and go out and start raising her little towels that were over each of those deals so I could figure out which one I wanted.
Yeah.
I was out there scamming on dessert, and there was always something different. I remember that. As I was lifting those towels, sure, you'd go, oh, pumpkin pie. Nope.
Yep.
And you look, and I'd always find something like, I don't know what that is. Man, it looks good. And so, and then I remember too, we did, because I just recreated this a year ago. I've been kind of trying to chisel away, bringing back old family foods or old traditional foods. And my grandma used to have a couple of Christmases, just a great big turkey roaster full of chicken and dumplings. And it was so good. And so many of us now don't even know what a dumpling is or haven't had one.
I haven't had one in ever.
Yeah, it's kind of a non-baked biscuit, that kind of cooks in the broth. But
Yeah.
it's really, really good. And so I just wanted to taste that again because it'd been 50 or 60 years,
Yeah.
And so I did it, and I remembered the flavor after I kind of got the recipe. I'm lucky to have some recipes from my Aunt Carol, who was her daughter.
Yep.
And so I remembered it. It came back when I tasted it. That's what it was out of Grandma Mary's. And a lot of people would even have that with potatoes, even though the dumpling's kind of a starch. You'd doing that out on the plate. So yeah, it was just all those kinds of foods and lots of snacks. And I think that was a time too, and I kind of do it now. It's kind of weird to think of it that way, but that was a time I think that was kind of a bighorn show for all the smokers in the family too. Everybody that smoked meats, everybody had their best stuff.
So is that a Weatherman thing? I mean,
I think so.
If you go anywhere in town right now and someone says our name, they're a smoked meat or some kind of foods associated with that.
It's true. Yeah.
Was that true 50 years ago?
It was. Yeah. It was. I'm sure that I can't say that I know that my Uncle Harold did it, but I'm pretty sure my Uncle Don did, and I know my dad did. I mean, and you got to remember then, I have all this new stuff that's cool. He had the little Chief smoker, basically an aluminum box with a little electric heat plate in the bottom and he would make his own wood chips. He would buy some, but he didn't quite trust those. He'd run out to Sherman Creek and get 4 kinds of apples and peaches or whatever. Yeah. He'd have a hatchet and he'd chip that stuff away and he'd make his own stuff because and that's funny because the Weathermans of that crowd were just that way. They were finite type. Oh no, if you just add 2 more slivers of peach, then that's the one, And so I remember that. And so that was kind of a benefit of Christmas out there was a lot of the smoked stuff and the snack stuff that were on the snack trays. I mean, that's stuff you die for today. I mean, it's just, you have a hard time finding somebody that takes the time and the caring to make something that good.
For sure.
It was good.
Yeah. It sounds good. So the 24th is fun because it's all, you're jonesing for Christmas. You got all your cousins, the food's good. And then, you're going on the car ride home. And so you're excited that Santa Claus is coming, but let's talk. Is it public radio or what are you listening to on the way home?
I think at that time, something out of Spokane, some AM, 790 or something, and as you're leaving Grandma Mary's and saying goodbye, that's when all of the family and the closeness and the joy and the food and the dessert and all of that starts to kind of thin out and it becomes one word, anticipation.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God. And you're looking. I mean, I remember we were so sold out on Santa, that I mean, the whole time I'm saying, okay, well, goodbye, Grandma Mary. It sure was good seeing you. And I'm looking the whole time, just, I've got my radar on, just scanning the skies. And then on the AM radio, Dad knew whichever station it was to dial up. And, we're in Buicks and Chryslers and all these big tuna boat cars, so you get to kneel in the back seat, no seat belts, no anything. And sometimes you could even climb back up from the back of the back seat. Sometimes there'd be a rear lid between that and where the taper of the windshield came down. And you could get back into that a little bit. Probably not me so much, But, I remember getting up in there and that's where the speakers were. Because you'd want to I'd have one ear to the speaker and then looking out the back window into the sky as I'm listening to this NORAD play-by-play. Oh, Santa Claus was spotted over St. Louis just an hour and 40 minutes ago. He's moving northeast and and it was a great deal, when you consider this is in the late 60s, mid to late 60s. And they just did, I mean, it's on the radio. That's as real as it gets.
Yeah.
I mean, he was up there. These Air Force guys saw him, they're watching him. And so you're just scanning every little thing up in the mountains, because then, we weren't as populous as we are now. So most of the mountains were black, everything, but there'd be 1 yard light. So we're like, well, what, is that it?
Is that it?
Because, a tree would go across it as the car moves or something. And so, yeah, it was anticipation. It was, from Oakshot Road in the Colville Valley home, about 4 hours and 25 minutes. And it's always the heavy snow, usually. I mean, that's the things that stick in my memory was the big heavy snow coming down and the car trudging through the snow. And then that miracle that somehow from when we left our house, because I inventoried everything. I mean, I knew exactly what was under the tree. I knew exactly who it was to, because the ones that were from me to you, that had the names both, and none of them were Santa. Those were already under the tree. Anything that was from Santa was not anywhere on the property because he hadn't been there yet. And I inventoried everything. And so the minute I came through the door, I knew right away. Yes, yep. No, there's stuff in front of what I remembered, and so there was, that was the miracle. Was when I left the house, I knew exactly what it looked like, and by the time we got back, it looked all different.
Yeah,
and he'd been there, and your stocking was off the mantle and laying down, and full of stuff, and so it was just, just as a kind of a frame of reference. I mean, excitement, I think, was different in those days than it is now. I'm not saying we don't have excitement now, but it was kind of a different level. I mean, I remember racing and clawing my sister just to answer the phone. That had a cord about 3 feet long, just to be the one to answer a phone call. And that was excitement. Now you can imagine what Christmas is like for a kid that thought that was excitement.
Yeah.
But that was legit. It was true.
Well, and I'm just thinking too, like, for your parents that are playing Santa Claus to get the gifts under the tree, like right now, what we know basically is we poach our kids' Amazon cards, and we see what they've added in the cart. But back then, was it the JC Penney catalog and you're folding pages and then they're going to Spokane and trying to.
It had to be. And then I think probably one of the, at that time, probably one of the most brilliant things that I look back as an adult now and look back, they had the free kids movie on the Saturdays of December leading up to Christmas. From Thanksgiving on, it was free movie Saturday. And I think it was sponsored by the Chamber of Commerce.
Like at the Alpine?
Of Colville, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, at the walk-in theater at the Alpine. And I'm guessing that maybe all the businesses contributed to this. And then they kind of helped subsidize the Alpine or something, maybe to say, hey, can you run a couple of hour-and-a-half long feature films for these kids? So you'd go into the Alpine at noon and you wouldn't come out till 5 o'clock.
Really?
With all the cartoons and the previews and all the fun stuff. So, your mom would give you a couple quarters for snacks and drop you off. And now they've got the whole afternoon to get some shopping done and all that stuff's in the trunk, So I'm guessing they did a lot of that, and probably while you're in school leading up or something. But the only way you knew what you wanted is either one, you saw it on TV on a commercial, and everybody did have those, Sears and Ward's and those kind of catalogs. And the pages were dog-eared. You were so worried that maybe your parents couldn't take a hint. So you'd have an arrow pointing down.
Made it very visible.
Rip the page out and tape it to the oven.
How cool is that on the free movie day thing?
It was awesome.
That's way cool.
All the kids were there.
Yeah.
I mean, I would sponsor that if they would.
What a madhouse. You imagine being the people though that are running the movie theater and having all these,
wound up Christmas kids that are in there. But and I want to say that the features that they showed were, Christmassy type things, or things that we really wanted to see. And then, back then the movie, it had a cartoon or two, and it had like the Green Hornet or, like some kind of a Batman, Spider-Man type adventure. The one I remember was called The Claw, and he's this bad guy, and it would always end on a cliffhanger where, is the good guy die or didn't he? He went off the cliff and then that's it. Yep. You don't know if he landed or maybe he jumped out before the car went off or, And so there's always those kind of things that you kind of tried to keep up with, and movies weren't as common then, I don't think, for kids. So going to the movie was a really big deal.
So you probably were on your best behavior because you didn't want to get.
I think they got out of the car because all the adults went the other way.
Yeah.
I can't imagine what a romper room that was for the theater owner.
Yeah, that's funny.
But I think kids too. If I think if a theater owner came in and said, "Hey, sit down, shut up," he did.
Yeah.
That was kind of different then about that too.
Yeah.
But, I think that was a great deal. So I think that must be kind of how they got it done.
Yeah.
And I do know that they had to order in and do things because that was kind of my spoiler.
Yeah.
I saw a label on my drum set. I think when I was in the 3rd grade or 4th grade. And I wanted this drum set really bad. I wanted to be a drummer, and I was into the whole peace movement and everything.
Okay.
So I was kind of into that whole thing, and so I was just gonna maybe get a set of drums and a Volkswagen bus and stuff, and eventually
head to Woodstock.
Eventually carry on. Yeah, I check back again one time and again. Say hi to mom. But I got this drum set, and I'm opening it up for Christmas and doing the whole thing, and like I said at the time, you go into kind of a euphoria, kind of a blind, like. It's kind of like, I guess, what they describe how you hallucinate during hypothermia or whatever. I think Christmas did the same thing to us. You kind of went out of your own mind. And so I'm all set up on the drums. And I think it wasn't until like a day later when I was actually looking at the box, and I'll for the rest of my life, I'll remember this label. It said "Shipped to Macintosh Hardware." And I thought, well, now, I don't know any elves at Macintosh Hardware. I mean, elves made all this stuff. And that's when I kind of went, wait a minute. Why would Santa ship drums to Macintosh Hardware?
Yeah.
And there must have been some other things that go with it that allowed me to put two and two together. But I do remember that one thing. There was still a label on the box.
Huh.
And that's when I thought, I'm not sure this came from the North Pole.
That's funny. Wow. Well, what if Macintoshes was the North Pole? That'd be...
Well, for here it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, locally it kind of was.
I remember that as a kid, just going in. There was a little bit of everything.
There really
I remember Grandma one time bought me a snowboard, and it wasn't like a production snowboard to take to the ski hill.
Yeah.
But we'd use it actually in the cemetery. There was a little knoll there, and we'd go sleigh riding. Yeah. But yeah, I just remember there was always kind of one of everything in there.
Well, there wasn't. And I think, one of the signs of Christmas that I remember, and it's going to sound odd because we're all old now, but Dean and Rowena would decorate the store, and the from the railroad tracks going south, the first part was Macintosh Hardware, but that second building was clothing at that time, and it was Rowena ran that, and it had quite a bit of front window space too, and she would decorate that every year.
Oh.
And I remember, Dina McIntosh, their oldest, was a year older than Rob and I. Rob and I were the same age, and then Michonne's 4 or 5 years younger. And I remember when Rowena would decorate the deal, Michonne would always be the little one in it, and I just remember she made these beautiful window decorations of Christmas scenes or Christmas things. And I always saw Michonne's name in there because she was the little girl at the time.
Yeah.
And I still remember that, and just when you'd walk by and look and say, man, it's Christmas. It's for sure now because look at this,
Yeah.
And they would decorate up the windows, all there was, multiple businesses on Main Street then.
Yeah.
Everybody would kind of decorate the windows and stuff. And those were kind of the, those things that you remember as you get older.
Yeah.
That said it's Christmas time.
I definitely kind of romanticized that, like the old school vintage Main Street of small businesses, on Main Street, and the decorations and, that engagement. And to be fair, though, I do want to say that I feel that the city and Di and Marnie Sly do a great job of decorating.
I couldn't agree more.
And that event that they put on the first weekend of December where Santa, that is some of that old school stuff. And I'm so thankful that they're doing that and continuing that tradition.
I agree.
Because
I agree. That's so
it's
important.
pretty cool.
And it's a big deal. I went to it again this year.
And it's been missing for a while. I know they've been doing it for the last 4 or 5 years, but it seemed like there was a block where we didn't have that Christmas thing. And so I'm really glad that the people who decided to spearhead that, and I don't know all the people involved, but I definitely see Di and Marnie and the city crew putting a lot of time in on that.
I agree. And I've tried to say thank you to them lots of times for that. And I don't even know if they know that, when you go there and you watch and Santa comes up on the fire truck and everything, and you say, okay, this is really big for kids. I'm 63 and it's big for me. It takes me back. I get that feeling back. Angie just gave me a cocoa, and I'm watching these kids and the trees getting ready to light up and all the everything, and just you see all the people, kind of like Town and Country Days. You see the people you don't always make the time to see or don't get to see. And so they're actually serving a pretty broad age base there with doing what they do there. It's invaluable. And I think it's so prideful to see the town look so beautiful.
Agreed.
It really is. I mean, I love to come into Kettle in Christmas and see that, and just go, oh man, this town looks great.
Yeah, I don't think it's one of those things that you really have to be intentional and think it's easy to become complacent in that beauty. But imagine tonight not seeing all that. It takes the Christmas spirit out of everything because we're so immersed with each other in a small community that, for me, it just does bring, a lot of what you'd written about. Like that's a bottle of Christmas joy.
That's your dose of stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I agree.
That's great to see. And I know it takes a lot of time and effort to do anything, right? That's bringing people together. There's a lot of stuff that happens behind the scenes for that. And, but yeah, and it seems like each year that grows, which is great, that it continues to get bigger.
And I dealt with some people related to that this year that I didn't recognize names, or maybe I haven't met. And that is such a good thing, because I worry, and I've seen in small communities, many times it's easy to have one racehorse that takes off and races, and you have the Marco girls, 3 Marco girls, mom and 2 daughters that do this. Well, okay, and then what about when they say, okay, we've had enough? Then it goes away. And we've had those ups and downs. And so I don't see that on this. I mean, there's depth on the bench, and I'm sure later we'll talk about Operation Santa Claus. I see depth on the bench, and that's really a good thing. I mean, a community that continues year after year to have these traditions and everything are because you have 6 horses on the wagon, not just one that's pulling hard today, but could get tired,
Yeah.
So that's a great thing that I see here, and that says longevity to me. So I think those are great things that they're doing.
And I hope that continues to snowball, also to the point of your writing of just outside of December, because it's something that Rod Fogel and I touched on too, is the passing of the torch, and that was something that him and I spoke about quite a bit, was when we talk about the JCs and the Elks and the Odd Fellows and, these different organizations. And it's something, that I've talked about on here before, and it's something that Rod's felt in his position, but hopefully events like this that continue can get people bought into the community aspect of it takes a tribe, and there's a ton of value in coming together and offering an experience or a service for the greater good of the community.
Yeah.
And I hope that continues to get bigger and outside of December, to your point.
I agree. And I think it is my generation that kind of dropped the ball on that. Our dads got it done.
Yeah, for sure.
Our dads flat got it done. And we dabbled some. But now I think your generation is going to pick that back up. And I'm really excited to see that.
Yeah, same. So we talked about doing this, a week or 2 ago, just we've been slam busy and just running 100 different directions.
I didn't even know if you still wanted to do it or if you had time. I thought, I don't know.
I was creeping. Last night I was like, we better do it tomorrow or it's not going to happen. But you wrote some things down, just that maybe we can touch on. Some of these I know, but I have no idea what 3rd grade means.
Oh, well, when I think about Christmas and compassion and caring for others and everything, and I was a rotten kid, so there shouldn't have really been much of that in me, the way I kind of conducted myself at an early age. But yet there was, and it's always been in me. And as I'm thinking back, what was the origin of that? I've always known, and it was an event that just it'll always be a part of me. I'll take it to my to my deathbed. And in the 3rd grade, at that time it was really common to the lead up to school, the Christmas program, school's out, go home, do your stuff for a couple of weeks, have fun. And that first day back in January, when everybody came back, and it was, then we had show and tell, and it was just tradition. You brought your best thing you got from Christmas. So if I got G.I. Joe with the World War II kit, then I'm bringing that. And that first recess on the playground, or even before school, everybody's grouped up and we're all kind of sizing up how everybody did at Christmas.
Yeah.
And I remember during that, and having obviously putting in whatever it was I got and talking it up, I see another kid from our class, and he's over sitting on the swing set. He's just kind of swinging kind of casually back and forth, but kind of looking down. And I thought, oh no, did he not get anything? Because he's not in the, there's 4 or 5 groups, and everybody's in their little, and I'm thinking, oh no, I wonder what happened with that. And so I went to, and at that time, I'm so sorry, you didn't get to meet Beth, but Beth Brown would be Eileen Kaiser's mother. And Beth was kind of the playground lady, and she was one.
Kind of like what Eileen was for me?
Probably that, exactly. And you didn't need 6 then. I mean, Beth was it. Nobody would have monkeyed around because Beth would ask you not to.
Yeah.
I mean, she was that kind and that beautiful of a person that even on a dirty Johnny, if she said, please don't do that, you didn't, because that would be bad to upset Beth, And so Beth, I remember going to her and I said, Beth, I see him and there's something's not right. Did he not get anything for Christmas? And she said, well, he actually follows a different belief system, a different religion. than what you do. And so they recognize Christmas in a different way. And it doesn't involve gifts to yourself as much as celebration and joy for the birth of Jesus. And she kind of, I think to the best of her knowledge and my ability as a third grader to understand it,
Yeah.
she kind of explained to me that are different ways and there's different things that people do at Christmas. The math of it was the majority of these kids do one thing, but there are a couple that do something else. So I said, oh, okay, I get it. And she says, no, he's doing what it is that he and his family believe in, and that's perfectly normal for him. I'm sure he's been taught and he's been, given tools to process that and know that the ground he stands on is firm as well. And so I said, okay, I get it. And then it bothered me though, the whole rest of the day, because, we had one or two more recesses and lunch, and it was kind of the same deal. He kind of found a place to go or found something to do. And now I'm watching it. It wasn't just a happenstance thing. Now I'm kind of studying this. And so I went home and I explained to my dad what I saw. And I said, Dad, I saw this thing and here's the deal. And this, this buddy of mine at school, he follows a different religion and they don't do like the gift giving part of Christmas or the self-receiving part of Christmas. They sell, and I think my dad was familiar with the religion and he knew a little bit about it too. And I said, I feel awful, Dad. It's killing me just to see that, because everybody else is one thing and he's by himself. And he said, well, go over with him. Go put your toy in your cubby hole and go over with him. And then my dad came up with this idea. He said, well, I don't think it would violate the criteria of his religion. If he's your friend and you want to just get him a gift because he's your friend, that's a nice thing to do. He said, why don't we just go get him a gift that you think he would like, but it has nothing to do with Christmas. You're giving it to him because he's your friend. I said, yeah, so we did. So then I took that to school, and now on day 2, he's got something at school, but it's not anything to do with Christmas. It's just because he's my friend.
Yeah.
But yet now he's got his truck and he's driving it through the muck like the rest of us are driving our trucks. He's participating. He's doing everything everybody else is doing. It just kind of came a different way. And my dad had kind of come up with that way to achieve that.
Wow.
And that's something I'll always remember, is, that type of thinking from my dad, the help I got from Beth and understanding it, and just realizing that there were different religious practices and different ways that people look at and celebrate Christmas. And each is valid in their own way, but they're different.
Yeah.
And so that's what that was about. That was just something that I remembered as I was trying to remember the impactful things in my life. And that to me was the start of just seeing that Christmas isn't always balanced. And in that case, it was, more by design because of religious belief. But I've also seen the social inequity part of the misbalance too, of the haves and the have-nots. And it kind of looks similar. And I think in the 3rd grade, I started seeing that and thinking, I wish it were not such a difference. I wish the field was a little more level. And I think that's been with me the rest of my life.
It's a really tough dichotomy, because everything we've talked about to this point is happy and Christmas joy in it. And it's been our experience. And we've been very fortunate to have many good Christmases. But to your point, that's not everyone's story.
That's true.
And that's a harsh reality of life. And it's unfortunate. The good thing is that there are different things set up to help offset that. But yeah, that's just one of the realities of this experience that we're living, of it's not always balanced. And that's a tough thing, especially in a small community, when those peers that are maybe on the wrong side of the teeter-totter are, your good friends and in the community. And that's difficult. So I'd never heard that story before. So I appreciate you sharing that. And I guess that maybe even makes more sense, because, my brother and I were definitely raised in a very fortunate home, but we were also raised in a giving home, and from a very young age. And obviously, you and Kelly have led that, that giving effort. But I think tracing that back to that 3rd grade story, a lot of that makes sense. And I think it's a good transition to maybe then talk locally about Operation Santa Claus, right? Because I think Operation Santa Claus, and I don't know all of the formation and the history of Operation Santa, but I can tell you that today that, its intent is to help that teeter-totter, if you will, and provide for everyone in the community. So someone does have some kind of a Christmas memory that comes with happiness. And so, do you know the origin story of Operation Santa?
I can't say, son, that I do. I think it was a year or two before I became aware of it. I think the principal clearly is Judy Davis. She was Jerry Davis, who I served on the city council with, and he eventually became mayor after I resigned. I think they lived in Kettle Falls most of their lives. Judy was a nurse and Jerry was a contractor. But Judy and a lady named Hazel Bruno. And I think I'm going to say Hazel was probably grassroots startup of the food bank.
Mm.
I that's my memory anyway. I don't think I have a food bank memory that didn't have Hazel Bruno in it. And I think Hazel and Judy kind of got together and said, food, gifts, clothing. And they said, there's got to be a way we can put these together and do what we want to do. And I think probably a year or two before I became aware of it, they started doing that and just said, we see a need. How can we fill it? And I think that need was, traditional Christmas, the way it's spun to us on television, even 50 years ago, and in books and magazines and whatever, is this, that big golden turkey and lots of presents and wreaths and, there's all
picture
those
perfect, if you will.
Picture perfect, Norman Rockwell looking stuff, if you go back even further. But I think they both knew in Kettle Falls, that's not how it always looked.
Yeah.
And so I think Hazel worked very hard to see golden something, half a turkey or small turkey or, I think we gave out chickens sometimes. Yeah. We gave out what we could get.
The spirit
of having, and food and the rest of the stuff, stuffings and potatoes and, and she did that part. And Judy went to work on warm clothing and necessities, but then also a gift, also something that said from Santa. And that's, and so I don't know, I wish I knew what made what spurred each of them to do that, or what they saw that said, let's create this, or let's put, but it was already running when I got there.
Yeah.
That kind of a thing.
So, I mean, I think a lot of people that tune in know Judy Davis, but I just wanted to take a minute and, what an incredible lady.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know if spiritual is the right word, but when you meet people, you can sense their energy. And I've known Judy since I'd known Judy when I was a very young boy, and helping you help Operation Santa. But she just had that warm energy and loving that, like, hopefully everyone gets to experience in their grandmother at some point, and
I agree.
And everyone, to her, at least in my age group, I felt like she treated as a grandkid. It was she was so kind. There was never an ounce of judgment. She always met you where you were. And, so many, I don't know. When you say Judy Davis, I smile, and I can envision her right now. She had the best smile. She was just so kind and soft-hearted. And I'm really glad that we have the opportunity with this podcast to keep names like that alive, because it's so important to not forget about people like Judy Davis.
I agree.
And
I agree.
And it wasn't that she did anything that any of us couldn't do. She just did it.
Yeah.
Out of the complete goodness of her heart and love for other people. And I just, hopefully every December we can circle back and mention that name, because it's in this area. You can't say Christmas without saying Judy Davis.
It's true. And I think it's really safe, son, to say that Judy Davis was an angel.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a fair use of the word, and she was. And maybe at some point we can incorporate into a next thing, or at the end of this or something. I wrote a piece called Santa Was Here the Whole Time.
I tried finding that, and
I found it.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, so I do have that.
We'll include that. If it's not in this one, then maybe next December. But that was a good piece.
And it does. Yeah. It talks a little bit about the qualities and what Judy was the person to do that type of thing, because there's challenges in any charity or any charitable effort. And, Judy, honest to gosh, handled it so well. There were times I was up and down, really up at times and like, oh, this is so awesome. But then there were times like, I want to kick that guy, you know, and Judy wasn't, she was flat.
Yeah.
She was stable, you know, and Judy was an angel, and there's just no doubt about it. And when I go in every year, they have a picture of Judy still at Operation Santa Claus, and I'm seeing all these fresh faces and fresh energy and some younger people, and I'm so excited about all that. And I know she would be too. But then I look at that picture and I choke out, and I just try to keep thinking of the mission. You know, she created this, she did it, but it just, I miss her. I love that woman.
Well, and a great example of true leadership, because it's still going and she's not here.
Yeah.
And that's when you can tell a good leader from maybe one that's inadequate. Of you can remove her from it and it still continues to function the way that it should be functioned.
She's in the hearts and passion of many.
Yeah.
And that shows every Christmas.
Yeah.
I agree.
So are you comfortable, and no worries if not, telling how you met Judy Davis and kind of how you guys began your relationship?
You know, I goofed up a long time ago with this, son, and I, in the words of the great Mike Walker, you know, the Alai Watash, he said, you know, once you tell the truth, you're kind of stuck to it.
Yeah.
A lie you can always change. I've told the truth about this, so I guess it's there.
I think
now it's stuck. I think I probably was aware of Operation Santa Claus in my high school years, but I graduated in June of 1981, and I mean barely, but I got done, and I'd had kind of a bumpy run there at the end, and so it was a time when I was on real thin ice with this community, probably in general, but inside my own home. I mean, my dad basically sat me down after it was right before graduation. I was class president, so I was getting to speak at the graduation, and the whole town was just on edge about it. What is he going to say? Am I going to be, am I going to not have any pants on under my robe, or just what, what's it going to be? Sky was the limit for me at that time. I didn't know any boundaries.
Yep.
And so my dad, I think, sensed that. And probably a day or two before my graduation, he sat me down and he said, you've put us through a lot. All these shenanigans and all these things you've pulled and all this stuff. He said, you've put your mother through a bunch, and you put me through a bunch. And he said, you are going to finish this with class and the right way, or you will change your last name and you will leave this town. And he said it in a way that only my dad could say, because he never said anything harsh or, but what he said he meant. And I knew that if I goofed that up, my last name would be Smith, and I'd be living in Cheesaw right now, or something. Yeah. And so I just knew. And so I straightened up, but that kind of carried on. It was like, that's enough.
Yeah.
You're grown up now, you're graduated, the kid crap is over, knock it off. Yeah. And so I was on kind of thin ice all that summer. Usually the summer after your graduation, you might be a little wilder, not me. I had to kind of get my act together and grow up and take a look at being a man. You know? So, and I think I did. I mean, for the most part, probably you'll have a podcast down the road and somebody will say, remember when your dad said that?
Yeah.
But the way I remember it, I think I kind of did. Mm-hmm. And so, but that fall I had actually gone and, it was probably one of the Animal House apartments or somewhere. We had a big card party and a big guy get together thing. So I'm probably, 18 years old and I have too much to drink at this deal. And I passed out, and that didn't happen too often. I could handle my booze pretty good, and I didn't get too off the hook very often, but I don't know what the event was or what the occasion was that time, but I think maybe I got some hard liquor, and I didn't usually do that.
The Spodey got the best of you?
Something like that, yeah. I think the Spodey, I've always been a sucker for pineapple. You know? And so something got me, and I way overindulged. And what I know is I woke up feeling a lady kicking me and kind of yelling at me. And I'm like, what in the world? And I kind of wake up and I look at her and I'm like, don't kick me. Yeah. She's like, wake up, get off my porch, get up. And I kind of look around and I'm on Main Street. And I mean, my last memory was I had a full house, at Animal House. Yeah. Jack's over deuces or something, and now I'm at Main Street. And then as I kind of look down, I'm wrapped in like a sheet or a blanket or something. And the guys had left me there in my skivvies, wrapped in a blanket on the front of Operation Santa Claus on the porch. And it's this time of year. It's, the 20-something of December. And I'm out there hypothermic. I don't know what time I got there. I still don't know. Sometime during the night. They just thought, well, heck, let's leave them up there. That'll be kind of funny. When they go to open that up, there'll be a fat guy in a blanket on the porch. That's pretty Christmassy, isn't it?
Surprise.
And so it's Judy Davis trying to get me to wake up. And I'm basically slumped over against the door of Operation Santa Claus. And so she kind of gets me woke up. Well, Judy was a nurse, and so she can kind of see the purple lips and everything. I'm probably on the edge of being in a bit of trouble between the total dehydration and alcohol poisoning and hypothermia and a combination of things. And so she gets me inside and she goes, well, let me get the heater going. And at that time, so that's the Boise Plywood Woodworkers Union building, that's where they conduct their union business there. And it was then, and it had, back then it wasn't uncommon. A lot of people had them. We had one, but these oil furnaces that took kind of a number 2 diesel heating oil looking stuff. And it burned the oil to create the heat. And all of them leaked and all of them stunk like the fuel. And when they burned, there was no efficiency rating on them. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
You could see a dinosaur come running out at any minute, And Judy takes me and my blanket and drapes me over this freestanding heater. It's just up against the wall that direct vents straight out the wall. It's nothing fancy. No ductwork, no anything. Just a big blower coming out the top of it and a ductwork going out the wall. And there's a big oil barrel outside with a hard pipe going to it. You know? And this thing stinks. I'm hungover. Bad. And I'm draped over this thing, breathing these fumes, and I can't stand it, but I'm starting to shiver now. I'm starting to wake up and come around enough that I realize how cold I am. And I'm pretty cold. And so I'm starting to shiver. So I can't leave this thing, but I'm about to throw up. Honestly, I just remember, I still can't stand the smell of that. Every once in a while I smell that heating oil at someone's house, helping with something. I was like, oh my gosh, it's just, I can't stand that smell. So Judy gets this place opened up. I'm back there holding on to this furnace and trying to recover. And she's checking on me once in a while, but she's going 100 miles an hour in there. And I'm like, what are these people doing? I was pretty sure it was a Sunday. It was probably either a Saturday or a Sunday. Maybe it was a Saturday. Oh no, I know it was a Sunday because I was trying to get to the gun club and we shot on Sundays. So it's Sunday. And I'm thinking, what are these people doing? And there's a couple of ladies in there and they've got clipboards and they're writing stuff down and they're putting things in garbage bags and it's busy in there and they're hectic. And it was loud. There's an echoey kind of a thing goes on in there. And I just remember being a little sensitive with my big head, and I can tell they're having trouble. Like, well, how are we going to do this? Well, there's no way. And they're kind of not arguing, but they're trying to figure out how are we going to do whatever this is. And finally I see Judy stop and she turns around and she looks back at me, back at this stove, which is kind of the opposite end of where they were up in the front. And she goes, well, why don't we have Sleeping Beauty take it up there? And I kind of, look back behind me like, who the hell is she talking about? And it was me. And she comes back there and she says, I know who you are. She said, you're Eric Weatherman. And she goes, you're that guy that runs around all hours of the night with that big truck, ripping around, tearing up people's yards and doing this, and pretty much everything she said was legit. I had a truck with a set of headers and a straight pipes, and it was way too loud and had big tires. And occasionally I'd get off the side of the road accidentally, some things like that. So what she had was, we have a delivery that was clear up on the backside of Pinkston Creek and some dark hole up there that needed to go to these shut-in people that were living kind of, that off-grid is what we would call it now, but that was just living kind of back then. And but they didn't have water, they didn't have anything, and I don't think they had transportation. So they had neighbors or friends or somebody that took them, for groceries and took them to different things. Well, Judy somehow had a time window that nobody's going to be there between noon and 3. That's when we got to get this stuff in, because I think there was 3 kids, husband, wife, and 3 kids. And she said, none of us have type of vehicle to get up there. And I said, oh, gee, I'd love to help you, but I said, I'm kind of an officer down at the gun club and we have a big shoot today. And, I made up all this crap. What I wanted was one of those big greasy gun club hamburgers and a cold Coke. I needed to do something to get over this. I'm hurting, I'm hurting pretty bad. I've just breathed about, 400 gallons of fumes and I'm hungover. I'm wearing a blanket and it's just, I need to find my truck and then go get a gun club burger and try to do a reset. And she's having none of it. And she goes, I know who your parents are. I know who your parents are. Do you want me to run you to your house and tell them how I found you? And all I could hear as she's telling me this stuff, I'm seeing my dad saying, one more thing and you change your last name.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, this could well be that one more thing. I wake up in a blanket or in a sheet on the porch of a charity.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even know what he's going to change my name to. It probably won't be a very good name, you know? And so I said, all right, no, don't do that. I don't think she had any clue the predicament she had me in.
Yeah.
You know, I couldn't, made me an offer I couldn't refuse.
For sure.
And so I said, well, can you take me to find my truck? And she said, yeah, where do you think it is? And I said, well, I don't know. I think it might be at Animal House. As we started to go towards Animal House, there it was sitting at the swimming pool. And somebody had flipped a few Brodies and then left my truck. Thank you.
Yeah.
You know,
Here's your sign.
Didn't wonder who that was, you know. So I go there and I get my truck and go get dressed. And I think Rob McIntosh was one of them that was in on doing this to me. And I grabbed him, and it might have been Brett Roseberry maybe at that time or somebody. And I said, hey, thanks guys. You know, that worked out really well for me. That's really funny, you know, and I was a little pissed off about it, you know.
Yeah.
And I said, but you guys are going to come help me now. And they said, we're good. You know, they were off at Rob's house or wherever they're, you know, we're good. You know, I said, no, this lady's going to tell my parents. And if she does that, I'm all done. I'm living somewhere else, you know, and you guys put me there. You're going to help me get through this. And I remember Rob saying, well, who is it? And I said, Judy Davis. And I remember Rob kind of snapped up at the time, you know, which again, then nothing affected us. We thought we owned and ran the world.
Yeah.
You know? Rob looked at me and goes, she knows everybody in this town and she's religious. He goes, we got to do it. He knew from the hardware store, from something that, you know, Judy Davis was a sweet person, but she's all business.
Yeah.
There's no bluffs. Judy didn't play poker at all. You know, I mean, straight up, he goes, we got to do it. And so we get dressed, we get together, we run up and get a chocolate milk and a couple donuts. And we go back, and Judy's drawing a map to this place with a crayon. And we head off up, and we jump in my truck and we head up. Well, we get stuck maybe halfway in. We dig out enough to get some chains on, and we trudge our way into this place. And we could see the tracks where the people had kind of snowshoed out, you know, and so we go in and like you, I had all fortunate Christmases up, you know, 18 years of my life at that point. And I'd never seen anything like this. I didn't, you know, I probably knew it was out there, but I had never actually been in an environment like that. You know, they had no running water, no anything. It was kind of a log structure, log cabin house type thing. And it was all just a one floor. But I mean, there were places you could see daylight through the logs, like the chinking in the logs had fallen out. And you could see where they had taken like newspapers and put them in old pantyhose and stuff and made chinking and stuffed it in the cracks. And all of the windows had different blankets or tarps and stuff, you know, just to kind of insulate a little bit. The bedding was all on the floor. There wasn't really furniture, but there you could just tell where each person's space was, because there would be piles of blankets and stuff on the floor. You can just kind of tell when a house doesn't have a lot of food, or does, you know, I mean, it didn't really even have cupboards, but even just on the countertops or the shelves or whatever, there just wasn't a lot of food, wasn't a lot. And when I went around the back of the place and looked back there was a deer hanging, and it had meat cut out of it. And so that, you know, this deer was frozen in the back. You know, this was real winters back in 81, you know, but they were eating this deer as they go, you know, kind of a thing. It was tough living. And I just went, holy cow. So we started getting in these garbage bags that Judy sent with us, and we started setting out these gifts. And I think we had a little Christmas tree, and we put that out. And so we're trying to do a good job of this and make it look real. Because it was, even though all of us are knuckle dragging thugs at that time, this touched all of us. We'd all had wonderful parents and upbringings and everything. So none of us had ever been in that before. And so we're trying to get this right. And we kind of get it all set up. And I like, God, this isn't enough. These people need sleeping bags. They need heaters. They need real food, you know, and so we go back, and I dropped the guys off. I went back up to Operation Santa, and I said, Mrs. Davis, we got that delivered. We got it in there. And I said, it's in a terrible spot, but we got it in there. But I said, they need 2 or 3 times that much. They need a lot more blankets, a lot more clothes. They need some heaters in there, really. And I said, their only real meat is a frozen deer out back, and they're hacking at it with a hatchet, you know. Yeah. I said, they need some things, you know. They need a meat saw. They need some frying pans, you know. They need a lot. And she said, well, we gave them what we can. And I said, well, no, I mean, these people need more than any other people you have. She said, well, she said, I don't think we can say that. And I said, well, no, I mean, it's really bad. And she said, for you, it's really bad. And she said, we take what we have and we make it go as far as we, basically she explained to me, we do the most we can do with what we have. And that was kind of another gut check moment for me. And I sat and drove around with that for a little while, kind of drove around town. And I didn't have the money to fix that at the time, and so I went home and told my dad what I did.
Yeah.
I said, Dad, I got a big issue. I got something going on. And I said, part of it is a problem with me, but we're going to have to deal with that later. The bigger problem is somebody else. We need to deal with that now. And so he sat down level-headed, and I told him what I'd done, how I'd woke up there. I told him the whole story, but I said, that's not the worst of it. The worst of it is this family's in dire need. And my dad, bless his heart, said, well, get in the truck. We jumped in his pickup, and we drove to town to Western Auto in those days, kind of where Rancho Chico is now. That was a Western Auto store that was open on Sunday. I think it was maybe challenging finding these things on a Sunday, but we went in and got him a whole pickup load of stuff, toys and things, and we ran it up there, and we got it in there before the people got home.
Oh.
And that was my start with Operation Santa.
That's cool.
I kind of have been with it ever since.
That's a heck of a origin story.
It is, and I got to keep the Weatherman name. I still live here, and so
yeah.
I mean, it all kind of worked out for all of us. My dad was able to get over the dopey part of what I did and see the bigger thing, and then he basically made it all happen.
That's great. I have a picture on my cell phone. It must have been maybe from years after that, and it's you in a Santa suit and Rob. Maybe Balcom. I can't remember who the third person is.
It's Corey McNamee.
Okay. Yeah. I have that picture.
I think Corey and Tammy were just starting to date or something. And Tammy went to school with Rob and I.
Yeah.
And yeah, they're in reindeer outfits.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
I've seen that picture too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So that probably was a few years later.
Yeah.
But
you guys got more creative.
Kind of got more into it.
Yeah.
We got more into it. And there's, another great Christmas thing that I just now thought of, just now that you said that. In those days, you had channels 2, 4, 6, 7 was public broadcasting. And sometimes there was a scratchy channel 10 that I don't even know what it was, something out of the Tri-Cities or something, maybe, I don't know. But then channel 13 was a weather station. And it was a thermometer and a barometer and a wind direction and 4 or 5 different gauges. And when you'd watch it on TV, they filled your whole screen, which was 24 inches in those days.
Yeah.
But this is a big weather center wherever this is at.
Yeah.
Well, somebody figured out the reality of it was this thing's in a little bitty block building at the base of Gold Hill over here on the road that goes right up past Heights on that corner. There's a little block building, and that's where all this is transmitted out of. That's where it takes the weather readings. And the gauges were all only 4-inch gauges or whatever. And there was a camera on a rotator that went back and forth and just shined on all the gauges. Well, 24/7, Channel 13 just had panning gauges.
That was the Weather Channel?
You could look, and that was the Weather Channel. You could just look and see what is at this moment. Well, one of those gauges apparently malfunctioned, and there was a blank hole. And we came up with a bright idea. This is many years later. Rob and I and Mike Riviere put on our Christmas hats and all our stuff, and we took, they had those Polaroid cameras back then. You could take the picture and it puked the picture out. And we took one of those, and we held up a banner that said the 3 wise men, Bethlehem or bust. And we actually went up and broke into that building and put it in that empty hole. So you had the temperature, you had the barometric pressure, you had the wind speed, you had the 3 wise men, and we did that.
That's funny.
And we were up for a month before somebody caught it.
Yeah.
We run right back to the tavern and said, "Hey, dial up channel 13. We're on TV."
Oh my gosh.
It was, I mean, believe it or not, that was a big goocher back in those days.
Yeah.
Oh my God, those guys are nuts. They actually put their own faces on TV. But yeah, that happened at Christmas, and we're all in our Christmas hat. I wish I had that picture still.
Yeah.
I mean, it was. Somewhere I kept a video. I videotaped like a minute of it straight, just going back and forth.
That's funny.
And somewhere in all my junk, I do have the old big VHS.
Yep.
That's when the camera sat on your shoulder and it was huge.
Yeah.
And I have that somewhere. But yeah, that was quite a deal. But that back to Operation Santa, that was my start with Operation Santa.
Yeah.
And then, man, just many, many years and many great memories after that of getting to do some really good Christmas stuff.
Yeah, that's classic. I'm going to dive into a few of those, but I drank way too much coffee this morning. So we're going to pause real quick. I'm going to hit the bathroom, and then we'll be back in just a minute. All right, we're back from the bathroom. So yeah, love the old school origin story on that. I guess I want to just take a minute and talk about my first kind of recollection and experience with Operation Santa.
Yeah.
I'm going to say elementary school age, probably maybe in that 8 to 10-year-old is if I had to guess when Operation Santa is on my radar. And I think my first things, what I remember most vividly would be going in and saying hi to Judy. If I remember correctly, early December comes and you and Judy, I remember you'd stop in there a lot. And so I think you and Judy are kind of, you've been in the game now probably for close to 15 years or something, at this point, because this is the early 90s.
Yeah.
And so I have to imagine that you guys are talking logistics and, the upcoming Christmas season and what's going on. And if I remember correctly, at that point, you'd actually made a pretty good connection at White Elephant.
Yes.
And White Elephant we can't really talk about our origin story of Operation Santa without mentioning White Elephant and the role that they played.
Boy, no kidding.
But just to paint a quick picture, at that time, you're running our tugboat contract as Columbia Navigation, but then also had just bought a wood grinder, and that was new, and traveling around and doing wood recycling. And so you had a pretty hefty crew on at that point. And so I remember early on, and I don't know who all was with us, but I know it was you, me, and Cameron, and then a couple of the guys. And I remember taking an enclosed trailer down to Spokane, and White Elephant would donate a whole trailer full of toys, and some of which were broken or malfunctioned or needed batteries or whatever. And then we would take those up and bring them home and put them in the shop. And basically you'd have the guys on for a couple of weeks, just getting all these toys good to go. And I remember walking into our shop, which typically would have some kind of a fabrication project or a piece of heavy equipment in there, and everything was gutted, and there was just rows of tables and toys and Post-it notes, and this one needs batteries and this one needs a spring and whatever else. But we'll get into some other things, but that's one of my first things. And I remember doing that trip all the way. It's funny how my memory works, but I remember the first one that we did was with the enclosed trailer that we used to race dirt bikes out of, that beige one.
Yep, I remember that.
And the last one I remember doing was in the 28-foot Charmac, which was an enclosed snowmobile trailer. And so I remember doing trips through, and there was 2 trailers probably in between, but I remember the trailers that we would take down to fill. So I'm going to say Cameron and I probably did close to 10 of those, in our lifetime, somewhere in there, 5 to 10. And then coming back and helping the guys probably hit and miss for whatever we could do. But let's, why don't you just touch on White Elephant real quick? Cause I don't think the story's complete without talking about that connection.
And as you're talking, I'm trying to remember exactly when or where or how I first got my start with White Elephant, but I got to believe it's just that, they had that building south, connected building. But will
you tell people that if they don't remember or know what White Elephant is?
But if you don't, okay, you just landed here from Mars. But no, honestly, White Elephant was a sporting goods store down on the lower part of Division in Spokane. When you kind of get down, it was sort of in that area now where Division separates to Division and Ruby, and they're both, one way's either going south or north. The White Elephant was the big white building that had all the kind of circus painting and stuff on it. And it was a sporting goods store. In the history of this is the Connolly family. And I don't remember their father's name. I worked with Rich and Pat Connolly, and Pat Connolly mostly. But their father, I think, had gotten out of World War II. And he came back to Spokane and kind of worked some hit and miss jobs, but he started buying Army surplus stuff. And I want to say maybe he even, as the war, handled some of the supplies and a supply chain guy or did some things like that. And so I think he was making trips down to either Richland or Kennewick or somewhere, and he was buying, surplus items and bringing them back and reselling and just saying, I can find a Army cot, for $5 and sell it for $7.50. And he was doing that. And that eventually grew into the White Elephant, and And so the White Elephant, kind of their MO was they would find stores that were either closing out or had had a flood or some kind of damage or just, going out of business. And they were basically just, buying at auction type, sale prices, buying things and then reselling them in their commercial storefront. And so with the sporting goods, they had all the hunting and fishing tackle. It was what Cabela's is to you now, the White Elephant was to us when we were kids. It was,
Yeah.
The first piece of magic was the mechanical elephant that was out front. It was a ride that you could drop a nickel in and the elephant rocked you back and forth. But they had just this whole row of guns that if you were a kid, you just stood there and drooled. They had, the Daisy Red Riders, and they had the lever action Winchesters, all the crap you wanted to, go off into the world with. And at the south end of that building, though, later then became a toy department, and they were huge in toys. They just had tons of toys. And so I think I probably started going there just trying to find buys, trying to find bargains and saying, hey, I kind of knew a little bit of the background on what they got and how they got it and everything. And so I thought, I wonder if they have stuff they would sell us cheap just to make our Operation Santa dollar go further. And so I kind of got started with them. And I there was a man that worked that toy department back there. He was kind of the manager of it. And he was like the male version of Judy. He was the kindest man I ever met. And I don't know if you remember Andy Anderson.
I remember Pat, but I don't remember Andy.
Okay. Yeah. Andy was the go-to guy in the toy department. And they had, if you ever drove by the White Elephant or watched it very closely, on that south side of their building, they had a big semi-trailer that just stayed parked out there.
I remember that.
And Andy and it was it lined up, I think, with kind of a porch apron off of the building. And as these things would come in, if they would buy a sale of, some Costco that closed somewhere, and all this stuff would come in, and they would sort through and go, and Andy would find the things that he thought was Operation Santa qualified, and he would put those things in that trailer. All year long, and he would hold these different things, and then he had, some of it was free and some of it was just marked down, and then some of it wasn't. Some of it we just bought right off the shelf, and so it was a combination of all three. Some we just bought retail, and then some we got at a discount, and then some he just gave us and said, hey, it's a Tonka truck and a trailer, but the tow hitch is broke. And we just ate that stuff up because we'd go home, and then, like you said, in the shop, we got to where we were taking the whole month of December off just to do toys. And then we were big on bicycles at that time. I was getting bicycles from every police department, everything, from all the evidence rooms and all the lost and stolen stuff that nobody received or anything. And we could take these bicycles and touch them up a little bit, new set of grips, a new seat to, fix the chain, whatever. And then it was a good bicycle to go back out. And so we were doing quite a bit of bicycle stuff too that was coming to us free. And all we had to do was just tune it up a little. And it was fun for the guys, because we worked hard and we were busy the rest of the year. A lot of that was gone even, because we worked out of area quite a bit. And so it was kind of just a great chance for everybody to get back together and spend a month together, and building toys is fun. It's pretty cool when you finally get that train to work. And, when you've got, Alan Burkhart's and Mike Potestios and Delvin Hills and Don Salzman's, there's nothing you can't fix or make.
For sure.
I don't care what it is. And with those kind of brain power guys in there, we're going to come up with something. And we did. We just built a ton of toys, and it was really rewarding. They did the spokesman came up and did a piece on Operation Santa, and then Judy sent him over to us. And he ended up doing a piece just on that. And I remember the piece in the paper was called Tugging on Heartstrings. And we had one of our old tugboat hulls, the old Burt Edwards tugboat hull, was in the shop, and we'd been working on it. Well, that got put to sleep. And the Burt Edwards hull in the shop was just covered in toys, waiting to be fixed or rebuilt or whatever they needed. And there was a picture of Delvin Hill, and I think he had like a giant crescent wrench, but a small Tonka truck.
That newspaper article's in Orient with that picture.
Is it?
Yeah, someone framed it for you.
Okay.
And it's up there with a picture of Delvin in the tugboat, and then
oh my gosh, toys. I'd love to see that.
Yeah.
Oh,
I've seen that. When you're describing that, I know I've seen that. And
okay.
I think it's in storage.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a true story. And so, yeah, Delvin made the paper, and it was just a great story. But so the Conley family for over 30 years helped us with Operation Santa. They would never let me publicize it. They would never let me use their name or that business. They just said, you keep it quiet, keep it under the fog. And he just said, we really love what you guys do up there. We love the grassroots of how you do it and what you do, and Pat had come up a time or two. And then in the later years, Pat had come up with his with his boat. He had a pontoon boat and loved to, he and his wife loved to camp on the river, and they did some things. So I think they got to see Operation Santa a little bit, but valuable. I mean, I can't tell you how many toys over all those decades went out that were that came from the White Elephant, that were based on, they were letting us get $1,000 worth of toys for $500, and that kind of thing. And so they were awesome. Just a quick add on to that story, so that, when the White Elephant closed, I cried a tear like everybody else. And I go, oh my gosh, this is part of my childhood. I could have lost a kidney and probably been less. Yeah. It's just like, oh no, not the White Elephant. You just counted on that place. It was just a structure, and so the White Elephant had been closed a year or two, and your brother was home at Christmas time, but something to do with his work or something he had going on, he needed a suit. And so we hear about this place in River Park Square that makes nice suits, custom made suits, because he's built different, and so he wants a custom fit suit, and so we go into this place, and he's getting fitted for the suit, and I'm good for about 30 seconds of that, and so I wander off out into I could smell carameled apples the minute we came in there. I could smell something, I said, I got to go back and see what that smell was. Yeah. And so I go back out and I'm walking around, and I decide it's on the next layer up, or the next level up. And so I'm on the escalator, and I hear, Eric. I turn and I look around, and, you run into cattle people everywhere, So I'm kind of looking around, looking at everybody, and I don't recognize anybody. And then Eric, I kind of look over again. And then I look, and River Park Square always has this gigantic 45-foot Christmas tree there. And then they have Santa Claus set up with kind of a mini North Pole. And I think there's a little train that goes around it. And Santa's waving at me, Eric. So I jump off the escalator at the top, ride it back down, and go over, and it's Pat. Pat is Santa Claus at River Park Square.
Oh, yeah.
Even after he closes up the White Elephant, they still operate the Valley one. But Pat just said, I miss the people. I miss the Christmas camaraderie and all the wonderful parts of Christmas. And so he is River Park Square Santa. And so, there I was. Got a couple of pictures.
Because that's only 4 or 5 years ago, right?
Yeah, literally.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's
so,
awesome.
that was kind of funny how that ended, the last time I saw Pat was still Christmas stuff, and it was still him doing it.
That's cool.
Wonderful family and wonderful people. But I've written, and I wrote again a month ago to the Spokane paper and told the story of all this, and just said, I would love you guys to do a piece and just talk to them and recognize them. And so far I haven't been able to get any traction with it, but they deserve recognized. They've sure done a lot over all those years for this community.
Yeah. Good on them. That's huge. You mentioned, with the crew that you had at that time, there was nothing you guys couldn't fix, except for, I remember one thing. Do you remember?
One thing we couldn't fix.
And so this is a toy.
There was some toy that, did it say cuss words or something?
Yeah, it was Buzz Lightyear.
Yeah.
It was right when Toy Story had come out.
I was just sure Alan or Mike had done that on purpose.
And I remember Cameron and I thought that was the funniest thing in the world, because for those of you that remember the movie Toy Story, Buzz Lightyear was an action figure, and he had like 3 buttons on his chest, and he'd say to infinity and beyond, or, he had these 3 different catchphrases from the movie. And this one, I would love to meet the guy that was working for Nabisco, or not Nabisco, whoever the toy manufacturer was. But you'd push this one and he'd say, like, go F yourself. I mean, it was just the most vulgar.
Disgruntled worker.
It was so funny. And I don't think we ever got that one figured. That one stayed on the shelf at the shop forever.
I do remember that now. I remember that. I said, guys, take that off of there.
Yeah.
We can't have that. And they're like, can you imagine what a collector that would be now?
Oh, man.
I mean, I don't know if that was a one-off or if it was, but it was horrible. And you could just tell that was some guy in his last day saying, you'll remember me now.
Can you imagine being the 10-year-old kid?
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
Cow.
Do you remember what happened to it?
No. It was at the shop for a while.
It was a novelty there for a while. I remember it sat in the window, didn't it? Kind of behind the toolbox.
Yeah.
That was one. Yeah. I was just sure those guys found a way to, computers were kind of getting going and things were happening at the time. I thought those guys found a way to do that.
That was funny.
I forgot about Cuss and Buzz.
Cuss and Buzz. That was something I won't forget. But then as we get older, Cameron and I, we're teenagers now, probably junior high, and we step up the Operation Santa even to another level. And so if I can paint a picture that we're living in Senior Subdivision at that time, And we were actually doing special deliveries that Judy had told you about. And we were actually doing these deliveries on Christmas Eve. And what that would look like is you were in a Santa suit and at the time filled it out very well.
But just right.
You were a great Santa. Had a red Polaris Sportsman 500 with a bull moose that was taken out of Captain Will's Bar and Grill.
Yep.
With a flashing red light that
on the nose.
Yeah. On the nose, so that was Rudolph. And we had a generator and a trailer in the back that ran Christmas lights all over the four-wheeler. I was fortunate enough to be an elf. And the costume that you picked up for me, actually, I put it on. It had leggings on it. And then the face was a huge elf face, but it actually sat below my shoulder line. And then I wore a stocking cap, like a Santa hat or an elf hat. Oh. And it had mesh.
I remember that. So it looked short.
It looked like I was short.
Yeah.
It looked like I was a 3-footer.
I remember that.
Yeah. And so that was my costume. And then Cameron got to be the Grange. And so we ended up, I don't know, we probably did half a dozen or so, maybe more deliveries around town where we would actually go and knock on the door or wherever it may be. And we kind of had this theater set up almost, where Santa had a big bag and I was a helper elf. And then Cameron staged as the Grinch would be somewhere kind of off in the distance.
Oh, that's right.
And it was, unbelievable if YouTube or TikTok would have been a thing then and we recorded the reactions of these kids once they would see the Grinch. I remember very vividly off Juniper Street once, there was a kid and Cameron had was behind a tree and he poked around and the kid was looking through the glass and he just started pointing and his mouth was moving, but nothing was coming out and his eyes were this big.
I remember he was on a couch, standing on a couch, I think, or something.
Yeah. But
then he started bouncing.
Yeah. And he was freaking out and Cameron would kind of do this elusive thing or whatever. And then, the end of the deal, I would go make friends with the Grinch and the Grinch would, come in and be part of the whole.
Oh, is that how we did it?
The whole thing. But a lot of good memories. I don't know. We did that for maybe 3 or 4 years, you know, and what a fun way to spend a Christmas Eve.
I remember a couple of those front windows, son, that we'd come up because I think I had a lantern and it was probably battery powered or something, but just something that I could kind of swing, so I got the big white bag of toys over one arm and swinging the lantern in the other. And that was a year like this when there was no snow. Yeah. The one year that we did that, we did it on four-wheelers because normally we'd be snowmobiles or something, but that year there was no snow. And so I think our story was we landed in Colville and rented the four-wheelers or something. We had a story. But I remember coming up to somewhere in town, but it had the big picture window and all the kids are playing and they're, doing what you do at Christmas. They're all ratting all over the living room and running around. You can see the parents back by the kitchen standing and everybody's around doing their Christmas thing. And we start coming down the driveway and I'm swinging that lantern. And I just remember this kid and he's engaged in whatever he's engaged in with all the other kids. And and then he kind of goes, and he sees me, then he sees the lantern, he sees you guys and he goes, and we can't hear him because of the window. Yeah. The picture windows there. But this kid is screaming his head clear. I thought his eyes were going to pop out. He goes absolutely berserk. And we had, I think on those special deliveries, we had named on the packages. So we knew, we'd go in and say, okay, who's Billy? And Billy got this. And who's Susie? And so we got to actually see and be around that kid later. And that was one of them that always stuck in my mind. That was just, this kid, I thought we were going to lose him. He saw Santa coming down the driveway with a bag of toys and Grinch and an elf were already up at the window or however we did that, For sure. This kid just about blew a gasket. You can bet he's somewhere telling that story this week.
For sure. Another memory that I had was around that same time period, and we had a special delivery out in Gifford, and we were heading out there. We had a Ford Excursion at the time, and I think it was the four of us went out. And you were dressed as Santa. I don't think Cameron and I were in costume, but we were just going along. And there we come around the corner somewhere after Bradbury, and there's I think it was even a minivan pulled over with flashers on.
I remember this. It was terrible.
And if I recall correctly, a family was coming home from Christmas dinner or whatever, going home, and it hit a deer.
That's true.
And there was kids in the van, and they thought that Dad had just hit one of the reindeer.
Yeah, it was true.
And the thing was still alive.
It was.
Yeah. And so I remember you got out. And so imagine being a kid and you're crying in the van, and then all of a sudden Santa walks up and says, "Oh, it's okay. I got, Christmas magic."
I got magic, yeah.
And I remember you sent the van forward,
Yeah,
and said, "Hey, I got, I'll take care of Blitzen or whoever it was." And Cameron and I are in the back of this excursion, and we're kind of, what's going on here? Because, we were a little nervous. It looked like a stranded vehicle or, whatever. And then it leaves and comes back, and you reach in the glove box and grab a pistol, and we're like, what in the hell is going on here? And you're like, I'll be back. But the damn deer was in the headlights in front of us, and it was wounded. It was like paralyzed.
Oh, no, you guys could see it?
Saw the whole thing, and it didn't die. You put a whole magazine. I remember it was like just pumped full of adrenaline.
Oh, no.
And if I could paint a picture very morbid, but Santa Claus, beard, hat, head to toe, and a Beretta. And rest in peace, Blitzen. It was completely, Cameron and I were just like, oh my gosh. And yeah, I guess that's not like a super joyous memory, but that's one I always think of. It was, if you could write that into a movie somewhere, into a bad Santa movie or something, that was priceless.
That isn't the Christmas I was always trying to paint. I remember sending, because the dad was wanting to stay and help, and I said, you need to get the kids and go on your way, and Merry Christmas. Santa's going to sprinkle some magic, and I knew what that magic was going to be.
Yeah.
We can't leave this deer like this. Do remember that.
Yeah.
So I do remember that.
That was...
I think I came back from that one with the munchies. Did you go in with me? We delivered, like you said, down by Gifford area, and I think we had some bicycles.
Yeah.
And I took them in the house, and this was kind of an alternative family. So this would have been before the marijuana laws were passed, but somehow they knew they were going to be, so they went ahead and started up a little early.
Yeah.
And I had never been around it much, and just in the time I spent in that house.
You got hotboxed in the living room?
I got hotboxed in this place down there, trying to get some bicycles under the tree. And then I don't know if you remember this, we had those, everybody had them, but I was buying them at Costco at the time. I could buy these big shrink wrap things with 48 of those little throwaway cameras.
Like the disposable ones?
Little disposable cameras. Yeah, you just mailed them in and they sent you pictures back. Yep. And so when we would do these special deliveries, I would take the camera and give that to the parents and then let them get pictures of us.
Oh, that's cool.
When we were in costume.
Yeah.
So then they could show the kids after Christmas, look, there's Santa kneeling by your bed.
Gotcha.
And I'd be kneeling down with a bag of toys going, have some surprise look or whatever. Yeah. So that, and I'm sure those are in photo albums that someone's talking about somewhere. We did a lot of it.
Yeah.
And so, we left the camera with the parents to get pictures that proved, hey, Santa was here. You were just asleep.
Yeah. So the other funny thing to touch on with that, and it'd be funny to hear Cameron's perspective on this, but I think he's in alignment with me, and I might be dramatizing this a little bit, but somehow through all of this process, we started helping Cameron and I at a very young age with Operation Santa, but somehow still always believed in Santa Claus. We were just helping Santa, with Operation
you have
Santa.
Both?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Well, and I joke about this with my kids now, and they ask, well, how, when did you first learn that, Santa,
had helpers
for sure. And, I said, I think we were like way too old, and I don't remember the exact age, but let's say 12 or 13 or something. And I was like, Cameron and I got bullied at school because we were the only, like everyone else at 8 kind of got it figured out. And I remember that one of the main reasons for that was our Christmas tradition was to go to Grandpa and Grandma Reason's up Ricky Canyon on Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
And come home and we'd have dinner up there and there would always be a magic tree, which was a tree that somehow had power in the middle of nowhere that would light up always sometime on our way home. And there would be a present for Cameron and I under the tree. And that was a special Weatherman tradition. We were, I don't even want to say we were on the fence. We'd made our mind up that we didn't believe anymore and we'd had it figured out. And we're pulling into our house at Singer's, and you drop the grade by Marcella Tripp's house and come down, and I think we're in that excursion again. And you're driving and you say, what is that? And you point up on the roof, and frickin' Santa Claus is on our roof.
He was up the chimney.
He was up the chimney, jumps up behind the chimney and disappears. And Cameron and I are going, whoa, what just, and we're in the back seat saying, yeah, the magic tree was cool, but maybe we saw an extension cord. We're kind of getting it figured out a little bit, like way too late in life. And then we come home and Santa Claus is on our roof. And, I remember thinking, holy cow. So then imagine being us, let's just say we're in 7th grade. And then, to your point, when you say you're in elementary school and there's a kid on a swing set, that didn't get anything, we're the kids that are coming back and being like, dude, we saw him. He's still,
it's true.
It's legit. And every other kid has not believed for the last 5 years. And here Cameron and I are saying, no, we saw him. We still might be damaged from that.
I'm 63 and I'm still that way. I saw him too that night. So yeah. I know.
Yeah. I still see him around town, actually.
Sometimes you see him coaching baseball.
Sometimes he coaches baseball. Yeah, for sure. So that's always a good memory for me. But yeah, lots of really good Christmas memories over the years.
Do you remember the first magic tree?
If I had to guess, that was at Butch and Gale's and we were snowmobiling.
It wasn't for us. We did the first ever magic tree for someone else, I think.
I don't know.
Up at Sherman, sleigh riding?
I felt like that was after.
Oh, was that after?
I think so.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, because I remember being pretty young at Grandpa and Grandma Reason's.
Okay, so I'd already been lighting up trees when I did that?
Yeah,
okay.
For sure. And was that one, was there a puppy involved in that one? Yeah.
Yeah. So just to fill everybody in, we had a close friend that said, hey, I've got this one of our sons has wanted this little black lab puppy forever and ever. And he's been working real hard. And we kind of laid down you got to be able to do this and this and this, the whole responsibility thing. And he checked off every box. And so we're kind of good to go on this puppy, but I really want to get, what's a magical way to really get this puppy? And so we went up in Delvin Hill again. He was an electrician. So we ran like 6 miles of electrical cord across there's a sleigh riding hill at the first South Fork turn that you get going up Highway 20 up Sherman towards Republic. You take a left at that lower South Fork road and it opens up into a meadow there. And that's a kind of a well-known sleigh riding hill there. And so we staged a sleigh riding party on a weeknight during the Christmas break before Christmas. And we got up there. Well, we'd gone up the day or two before and had lit up this tree up on the mountain, ran about 6 miles of cord down from the tree, took a big generator, put it down in the creek bottom and built an enclosure around the generator that would muffle it, but still give it enough air to keep running and do all that so that this could all light up. And then Delvin wired me some kind of a switch on a remote. Mm. So the generator was running when we got there, but the tree was dead because we hadn't hit the button yet. And so we get up there and we sleigh ride for a while and we're cooking some hot dogs and we do this whole thing. And then we say, you hear that? Do you hear that? And we start listening and we can hear sleigh bells. And they're coming back from like towards the highway from where we were all around the campfire at the sleigh riding hill. And we hear these sleigh bells. And pretty quick you hear ding, 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 ding. And do you remember who helped us be Santa that time?
I think so.
It was Grandpa Reason.
Oh, I would have got that one wrong.
Yeah.
But now that you say it, I do remember that.
It was Grandpa Reason. Yeah. And so I had actually written up a little bit of dialogue on some rolled up paper with a ribbon around. So here comes Santa Claus. It came in on a snowmobile, ringing the bell, doing the whole thing. And this little guy, and there's a bunch of little guys there.
Yeah.
But this little guy's eyes are as big as saucers. And Santa pulls up and he unties his ribbon and he pulls that scroll open and he starts reading about how responsible this young boy has been and how he is working hard to get a puppy and blah, blah, blah. And if you believe in the magic of Christmas and the magic of Santa Claus and, da-da-da-da-da, then and I don't remember what it was we had him say, but it was like, I believe in Christmas. I believe in something, and he said, after I leave, if you say that, then the magic will happen. And Santa Claus peels out and the snowmobile takes off. And this this kid gets up and gets up on the snowbank or something and just yells to the stars, I believe, I blah, blah, blah. And I hit the button, and up on the mountain, the tree lights up. And under that tree is a puppy in a little kennel.
Yeah.
Is a little black puppy. And I'll never forget it. It was a female black lab. Her name was Noelle.
Yeah.
And
that's right.
So up the hill you guys all go, and this little guy gets his puppy.
That's awesome.
That's one of my favorite ones
Yeah.
of all times. That was really a special one.
That's pretty magical to, be out in the national forest and sleigh riding. And
it was so white up there and dark. It's
Yeah.
just dark there in that valley. And
Yep.
then when that tree lit up, it really was. It was
Yeah.
awesome.
I wonder if, like, per capita in the U.S., we have the longest or the oldest believers.
Could be.
Like,
The only
per
place where
capita
they're
in the
still
nation. For sure. All these kids that have these cool Christmas experiences, and,
I hear about it every year.
Yeah.
I hear about it every year.
That's great. So, I think now just, kind of tying, maybe towards the end, but I think it's important if you'll just take a minute. First, a couple things that stuck out to me. If we bounce back to the white elephant thing, and I think that's just that relationships are paramount, right?
Yeah.
You're running a business locally. Judy is running a charity organization. You got guys that are on board to help out. We have this other business that's 80 miles south of us that helps out for 30 years, and whatnot. And a lot of the stories and the stuff we're talking about, actively, we've been out of the game a little bit. I know that still help and support and do that, but not at the level that we were for a lot of years.
Yeah.
But present day, it's still important to know that there is so many people in this community, and then still outside businesses that help support that mission.
Oh,
and so I
there
think
is.
it's worth, as we kind of wrap up this conversation a little bit, Chuck's a big part of that, right? At Operation
Oh,
Santa.
absolutely.
Yeah.
He was, were it not for Chuck and his wife, Shelby,
Yeah.
after Judy passed, and there were others, but the amazing part about Chuck and Shelby too is to come in for a month every day to do that work from Orient. Can you imagine the roads they've driven and the conditions they've done? The slick morning coming in, stay until 7:00 at night and eating cold pizza, going home. And, I just can't say enough about those people.
Yeah.
Chuck and Shelby were the bridge that went from the old to the new,
Yeah.
and he's still there. He's there right now.
And there's a great article for anyone interested that came out 2 weeks ago in the Spokesman.
Yeah.
That talk about that.
It does. I saw that.
So those two are absolutely instrumental in Operation Santa today. We know of the local people and businesses that I don't even think want mentioned, but just it's important noting that there's still a lot of support internally and externally, just in the surrounding area that help out. I think another shout out, when I think Operation, I always think Walt Steeb. That dude put in some time.
Still does.
Yeah.
I think he still does.
Walt is a great guy that had worked for you for a lot of years. It's really who Cameron and I cut our teeth under. We started working kind of directly under Walt as teenagers, from mowing yards to then doing tugboat work with him.
Yep.
But I can't think of a December that I haven't driven down Main Street and seen Walt's vehicle parked in front of Operation Santa.
No, when you think of Santa, Walt is like the A or the N.
Yeah, for sure.
He literally is.
Yeah.
And of course, Judy was his aunt.
Yep.
And he loved Judy, and she loved Walt.
Yeah.
And so he has that tie, but that tie also, Judy stayed in Walt's heart too.
Yep.
And that's why he's still big in the food bank. He's still big in Operation Santa, and he's just got a caring heart, and those things matter.
Yeah.
And her traditions have carried on through him, like many of us.
For sure.
That Judy's still alive and she's still here. In a lot of different places.
Absolutely.
But I agree with you. And Walt's done, I can't tell you how many boxes of toys Walt's packed up and down that Union Hall. Every year you get it all out. Every year you put it all away. He's fixed the roof. He fixed the window, probably fixed that furnace that I breathed on. He's just that guy.
Yep.
And Laramie Edwards for a lot of years.
Oh, yeah,
was up
absolutely.
there and doing those kinds of things. And you hate doing these kind of things because you're going to forget somebody.
And our apologies in advance because we know that there's so many people.
There is.
Yeah.
There is. But I can say that as I read, so Operation Santa has a Facebook now, and I see that they're profiling some of the elves and telling the history of the elf and the communication elf and the toy building elf and the the health and fitness elf, and they're doing so that's a whole new thing that none of us had even grown or thought about, or grown into, and so it is really exciting to see new faces, new people with new ideas, taking it into a new direction, with always the same goal of leveling that Christmas playing field.
Yeah.
And it's exciting to see that happen.
Yeah. And I think that in some part, I think it's going to be helpful. I wasn't aware. I don't have a huge social media presence, but that they have a Facebook page. Because I feel that maybe it flies under the radar a little bit, just how important and integral Operation Santa is to this community this time of year, and not just Kettle Falls. It serves Tri-County for sure.
That's true.
And so for those, if there is anyone listening that this is the first time they've heard the word Operation Santa, it's worth read that article, check out the Facebook page. If you feel so inclined to help, it doesn't have to just be with money. It can be with showing up and helping those guys out, or
you have clothing in your closet that they need that you haven't touched,
or just swinging in and dropping a set of coffees off and a box of donuts, because those guys have a well-oiled machine there and it's dialed, but just that generosity, and so I guess what I'm saying is that if any of this sparks with you, just you don't have to do anything, but just know that we have this cool thing in our community. And it's being done on a volunteer basis, and it's located on Main Street in the Union Hall building.
Yeah. Got the big Santa in front of it.
It's got the big Santa in front of it. And it's really what makes living in this community great. It's what makes raising kids in this community great. It's old school traditional things that have built the foundation for so many things that we've come to love and enjoy about being in Kettle Falls. And I know it goes on everywhere. We just know what we know here.
Yeah.
But it's special regardless. And there is something that all of us that have lived here, and many of us are multi-generational, but there's just something about, Kettle Falls and the people that truly, and it sounds so cliche and maybe even corny, but like, we'll give you the shirt off their back.
Yeah,
and that's the, Operation Santa is one of many organizations that do that. This time of year, it's so easy to talk about, and it's so important to talk about. But, and I talk about this almost every episode, but the intent with the Grange is just to keep that conversation alive, and to say, it's so easy, and I'm so guilty of it, but, we operate in these silos, of our phone, and we go to work and we come home, and everyone's so busy raising family and coaching sports and doing things. But it's important too to still remember why we're here is because of community, and it's the people in the community, and we're all different walks, shapes, sizes, all different walks of life. But this is a special place, and I'm not a world traveler, but I've been around a little bit, and my brother has been able to travel to many different places, and my other friends that don't live here, I got friends that live all over the U.S., but they say, Kettle's got something special, and it just, I think the reason I say all that is just with pride, and for the people listening, thank you for being part of the community. And I really do look forward to what's next. We're sitting here in 2025, and hopefully in 25 years from now, we still have an old rundown building on Main Street that pumps toys out every December.
I agree. And what a great thing you're doing here, Josh. Just this story and the exposure that you're giving it. I bet you somebody sees a place for them in this. And that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Because I agree with you. We tend to kind of get in our silos.
It's easy to do today.
Stay in our box.
Yeah.
But then every once in a while you see something and you say, I think I could be a piece of that.
Yeah.
I think I could contribute to that. And I sure hope people take that opportunity if they so feel it. And I like I said, I sure appreciate you being willing to take your time and your knowledge and being able to do these kinds of things to get that out there. And so people have that opportunity to take a look.
Yeah. I think that what I've learned too is that there's so much good going on that I don't even know about.
Yeah.
I kind of feel just because I'm here and running a business, and I would say that I'm definitely in this community. But even since I've started this endeavor, like there are so many good things and guests that I'm excited to have on this coming year of just good stuff that I don't even know about. And if I am that way, I got to know that there's other people that aren't in the
there's
loop.
a bunch below you. Yeah.
Yeah. And so in a time where there's plenty to talk about that could be doom and gloom.
Divisive.
Let's talk about the good stuff too.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
I don't know.
You couldn't have to me, I can't have an Operation Santa Claus conversation without, as you were talking about the supporters and the people behind the scenes, and there are, and some of these I can say now, but we had the Knight family in Deer Park, Knight Construction. Jim Knight and Doug and Dave and those guys, they've supported for years and years.
Yeah.
And they don't have a root in Kettle. They have a root in this area, and they, Jim has, Colville history, but they are so gracious and so kind to us up here. I mean, and they just, and I think they do it knowing, that it matters. And Bob Jones and Jim Knight were great friends. And once Bob became a supporter of Operation Santa, then those two would needle each other back and forth, about doing it. But one of my favorite stories, I was loading up some bicycles at Walmart into the snowmobile trailer. I don't know which one, but years ago. And we're loading up bicycles and we're rolling them into the trailer in that backdoor Walmart that I like to use. And I'm pushing the bicycle out, and here comes Terry Baxter. He said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, loading up bicycles for Operation Santa." And he kind of looks around and looks in the trailer, and he goes, "God, I admire your spirit, kid." Or, something along those lines. And I said, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "Wow." He said, "I can probably take you around about the first week of January, drive down the alleys of Kettle Falls and show you 2/3 of those bikes in the alley." And I said, "I'm not going to argue your numbers, Bax. I think you're probably right." But I said, somewhere within that third lies a kid that the bike meant everything. There's a life-changing bike in there somewhere.
Yeah.
That's going to really matter, and it's going to make a big difference. And he said, "I guess the way I'm choosing to look at this is if it takes 19 bikes for that 20th one to find its mark, it was worth it." And he said, "Well, hey, Merry Christmas." I saw Terry probably 3 days later, and then every year after that, he'd run into me and he'd say, "Hey, on them bicycles."
Yeah.
And he'd peel me out some $100 bills.
That's cool.
And he, I think he did. He looked at it his way, thinking, you can just give some kid a bike and he's not going to take care of it. And, and there's a lot of truth in all that. If you work for it and earn it and do this and that. But then I think Terry had such a good heart too, even though he didn't want you to know that.
Yeah.
Terry was so good-hearted too that he saw that 20th kid, it is life-changing. I think we've all probably been to some degree in a deal where something like that did, some kindness or some gesture or something that was just solely about you changed how you look at things. And I'm guessing that Terry probably had that at some point in his life too, and that rang his bell.
Yeah.
And it was, from then on, it was probably one of the proudest things I did for Operation Santa Claus was take those $100 bills from Terry and go get some more bicycles to make sure that happened. And I think of him this year as he's, now that he's not here with us, and I've thought of him a bunch of times, but my experience with Operation Santa is filled with those kinds. So that's one example.
There's lots of those good people that played such an important role in that.
Agreed.
And Terry was definitely one of those guys that had such a good heart, but didn't always want you to know about all the good that he would do.
It was too tough to have a good heart.
Yeah, but man, I mean that's cool. I don't know why. For me, I think about Terry a lot this time of year.
I do too.
And a lot of it is Terry and I were always early risers. I'm at the shop here early every morning and have been for the last 10 years. And Terry was always at the tavern early. He'd always be in there. That's back when it had a wood-fired stove.
Oh, yeah.
And so he would always come in, and he beat me, 80% of the time, but he'd always have one light on, and he'd be sitting at the bar reading the paper, and I'd, see the smoke coming up. But snow plowers, we like to start early because there's not a bunch of traffic.
Sure.
And Terry loved to plow snow. I love to plow snow. And so, we'd be up here. It was almost like a dog peeing on a fire hydrant on who could get up here first and put the first, blade, and he'd help plow me out and I'd plow some of his stuff. But it was always this back and forth kind of the early bird gets the worm.
Yep.
And I only got him a handful of times where, I'd get up at like 3:30 for whatever reason and come up. But
just so you could say you went up back.
just so I could say I one-upped him. But always the first snowfall now, I pull in and drop the blade and I look for a red Chevy.
It's just not the same. Huh?
Yeah, it's just different. And it was so funny because I think, I can be very serious at times too. It was always work first. I mean, we would come and plow for an hour straight, not say a word to each other. But then as soon as everything was clean and looking good, a lot of times I'd go in and have a cup of coffee with him, or we would just...
Then the BS began.
We'd be on, windows down, arm out the window. And some of my most favorite conversations took place with Terry on winter mornings at 6 a.m. after we just scraped a parking lot and would sit and talk about stuff. And so Terry's been on my mind a lot the last few weeks. I miss that. The old soul in me misses those interactions.
Yeah.
And I think for so many years, I just thought that's how it would always be. I've been plowing snow, on a four-wheeler since I was 12, but, up here plowing the shops, since I had a driver's license, and Terry was always part of my snow plowing on some level. And, I think when I was younger, I took some of that for granted of that we'd always have those through the window conversations, and it always stings. And it makes me, I guess it stings on one hand, and on the other hand, I'm grateful for the time, right? And the memory, and it makes me smile and think. And then also, to your point, show some compassion this time of year because he would have.
Well, and you know what that is, son? That's realization that Terry's life is a legacy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If it wasn't, it wouldn't be there.
Yep.
That his life is a legacy, and it'll stay with us, and it'll always be there. And that does come with a sting, unfortunately. For that certainly on the scale doesn't weigh up to all of the positiveness that you had for all those years, knowing Terry and bickering and making deals.
So many of them.
But I agree. One of my favorites, and what I wouldn't give to have one more trip to pull into TJ's, and it had been many, many years, probably 6 or 8 or 10 years, that Terry had driven the 65 Ford turquoise and cream with the canopy. And it hadn't been in it in a long time. I think he was even maybe redoing it or doing something, but hadn't seen that truck on the road in a while. And I'm pulling into TJ's for lunch, and that truck's coming out. And so he pulls up, and, we drop the windows, elbows out. And I said, "Oh my gosh, Baxter driving this thing?" And he just goes, he shakes his head and he goes, "Yeah, I'm selling my lunch special, so goddamn cheap. This is all I can afford to drive." And he rolls up his window and pulls away.
That's classic.
Yeah. Now that's with me for life.
Yeah.
I pull in there to have lunch yesterday, or, and I look and I think, what I wouldn't give if that turquoise truck could come around the corner and say some crap like that.
For sure.
I'm selling my lunch special, so goddamn cheap. I can't afford to drive anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
That's good stuff. But to your point, those, I call them like salt of the earth people, but the Knight family, Jones, Baxter, those guys. And, it's funny because even all those guys, were very set in their ways and stubborn at times, but they did have a common denominator of, I think they understood the value of community.
I agree.
And those names that we mentioned just so happened to be very successful businessmen.
They knew they were blessed too.
Yeah. And so the common denominator, even though they didn't always agree or see eye to eye on things, was generosity. And I think that's something to take with us, of moving forward, is that greater good. We don't have to agree on every single thing down the line, but at the end of the day, we can always find value in generosity and compassion and kindness.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. And this does seem to be that month that we pull it off the shelf.
Yeah. It's interesting when I was reflecting back and reading that, before we started, that the mind is such a powerful thing because, I think that a lot of what it is in December is a mindset. We just shift our mindset, to be more generous and patient and whatnot. And it's easy when you don't have a reason to do that, to not do it.
Yeah.
But the lesson potentially could be that, well, if you just change your mindset and your outlook, there's 11 other months in the calendar year,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
for sure. And it's a good reminder. And it's also important though to be intentional with this week, you know. For us, today's the 22nd, and the next 2 or 3 days, we're not talking business, you know, we're not talking about this or that.
Yeah.
Like it is important to also take that time away from everything else and be overboard with intentionality and compassion. That's important too. It's the same reason why you take a vacation, you know, and to go out and I think that's what we really love and enjoy about the Christmas time, is that it gives us that space to be extra intentional with compassion and kindness. And
Yep.
Man, it seems easy to get burnt out, and definitely, you know, we're living in a first world country and saying, oh, it's just material, and we're stressed with, did we buy the right gift for this person or that person? But that's not Christmas. You know, Christmas is a feeling, it's a gesture, it's love, you know, it's compassion. It could be from all different walks of life, you know, like it's not just universal across the board. And I think that's when you revisit, what I like around this time of year is listening to the lyrics of the old Christmas songs, right? And those were really, I think, written with a universal understanding of happiness and peace.
They tell the story, don't they?
Yeah, and if you really do study the lyrics, which I picked that up from you, and it's just something that we do, is, you know, I love listening to music, but knowing the words, and then I'll even go back and research, you know,
Same here.
why did they write this or
Yep.
whatnot. But these songs that are 50 years old, you know, aren't talking about what's hot on Amazon, you know, or Prime Delivery, or, you know, whatever the hot thing will be. It's about, you know, Noel and joy and, you know, just all of those things. We're very fortunate in our life and in our situation to experience those things.
I agree. And I think we need to, you know, kind of like what we talked earlier about the, you know, there's a bittersweetness of knowing great people. It's really sweet getting to know great people, and then it's bitter when they're not with you anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's something that we all need to be aware of too, is that for as much joy as the holiday season brings, for some people, it is the apex of depression too.
Yeah.
And it brings out the most in that. And I have friends that deal with that. And every year I worry and try to think what can I do to help through that. And I think that can be stuff as simple as being kinder in traffic to actually looking in on and checking on them and just saying, what can I do to help get you through the night?
Yep.
You know, and because there are people struggling right now, because we do paint kind of a universal picture that it should be like this. And if you don't feel like that, you feel different.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You know, that is definitely, those are our friends too.
Yeah.
And we need to be thinking of them.
Well, and it's interesting, you know, I mentioned the date of this thing that you'd written because, you know, it's 14, 15 years ago, and so much of it's the same. You know, I mean, I'm sure we can go put on the news and hear about a financial fiscal cliff and, you know, this and that. And like, so the lesson for me was 15 years ago, a lot of these things are still here. Yeah. So what are you going to do about it? You're going to get burnt out on that, or are you going to make the conscious decision to try to, you know, spread some joy? And that's the
That was funny lesson. When you read that, I said kids can free up their money to buy CDs. Yeah. I was sitting over here as you were reading that going, apparently that was a while ago.
For sure.
But then I actually have a friend that's my age that just was looking at, has a newer vehicle, and it's all the, you know, got all the Bluetooth and satellite and, you know, probably hand pulse, whatever. I read your retinas, whatever crap it all has. But basically she just wanted to play some Bob Seger, you know, go for a drive with the sunroof back. And how can we do that? And I thought, there's got to be a way to do that. There was too many of us. You know, we're still here. You know? And so I did a little digging around and found a CD player that would both Bluetooth or live wire in. But some of us still have CDs, you know.
For sure.
Those things didn't change. But I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Cool. Well, this was a great Christmas episode. I'm glad that we got to get it out a few days before Christmas. I definitely look forward to getting you back on. And I think there's all sorts of topics, you know, definitely, you know, I've trended a little bit towards just trying to get the history of the area, right? Those have been some of my favorite podcasts, to hear origin stories. And my intent behind that is because, once we hit record, it's here now, and so we'll be able to reflect back on and remember some of the names that we've mentioned today and continue that. And so I look forward.
So awesome.
Like, I know that you have a lot of history here, and a lot of people have reached out to me just to say, I want to hear, your dad's perspective on this history and different things. And a lot of it will be comical, but just really good stuff, know, and so we'll,
boy, don't you wish we had that 50 years ago, or that someone didn't take the time to, because there are some names and some situations, and there's some of it I remember, but I feel guilty not knowing more than I do.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great people built this community way before us.
Yep, for sure.
So one quick thing, you remember the story about you and your brother trying to get a hold of Santa Claus early because you had a plan change, or whatever you'd asked for in the letter to Santa Claus? I think you changed your minds or something, so you need to get a hold of Santa Claus.
Would that be a George Thomas thing?
Yeah.
I just had coffee with George yesterday.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Did you guys talk about that?
No, but it was just, George is one of my favorite guys. And
every year when Christmas season comes around, I have to think of it. And so for the people that don't know, Josh and his brother were young, second or third grade in there, and they were always working on something. And so some kind of a plan changed. We don't want G.I. Joe with the Kung Fu grip. We want Power Rangers or whatever. And I said, well, boy, I don't know. You have to let Santa know. And, well, we already wrote our letters in, and we're already, I said, man, you guys, this is a tough one. You're going to have to put some thought into it. And, well, we need to get a hold of him. I said, gosh, yeah, so did everybody wants to get a hold of him. Everybody does. And you were standing there. It was in our house down in Singer's Edition. You said, wait a minute, I know. Took off on a dead run around the corner, and you came back with back in those days, it was the Panorama phone book.
Oh, yeah.
It was the thicker phone book than just the kettle one. And you said, let's just look him up. You'd apparently seen us looking up phone numbers for things. You said, well, look him up. And I said, well, I guess we can try, but he doesn't live here. And so we look up, and I don't remember, we went through the alphabetical lesson, and we got into the SAN, and it was like Santos or Santiago, or we found something that was kind of close, but nowhere near Santa. And you said, well, maybe that's a cousin. I said, could be. I was game to roll with it. I said, give him a try. So you get on the phone and you call this guy up, Santiago or whoever he was. And somebody out in Arden, And so you call him and you said, hey, my name is Josh, and I'm looking for Santa Claus, and I was looking him up in the phone book, and I can't find his number, but yours is right there next to where it should be, and wondering if you knew him. And the guy was great. Whoever he was, he said, I do know him. And he said, I don't know if I have it. Hold on. And he kind of acts like he's looking, and he says, I don't have it. And I, blah, 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 blah. So we go through the whole drill. Well, that was a great idea, but it didn't pan out. And we go through it. Sometime in the next day or two, we're up at the little galley having breakfast, and one of the guys is asking, Dave Graham or somebody's asking, hey kids, what are you doing? You guys are only this tall, and what's going on? And saying, well, we're in a quandary. And well, what's the problem? We're trying to get a hold of Santa Claus. It's really important that we talk to him. We can't find him. He's not in the phone book. It's just we're having a heck of a time. Blah blah blah. And then this deep voice just from across the galley said, I got his phone number if you want it, kids. And you guys look over, and there's George Thomas,
Mountain of a man
in his cowboy hat and a flannel shirt, and he's kind of sitting in his chair, and he's leaned back, just finished his breakfast and having his coffee, and you guys both just turned and looked at me like stranger danger, like what? And I said, I know him, he's a good guy. I said, if you want to go talk to him about it, go ahead. And so you guys both, you look at Cameron, you going first.
Yeah.
You guys both kind of look at each other, go ahead. And you guys wander over there, and George had a little pocket notebook in his front pocket. And he grabs it out, and he puts his glasses down at the end of his nose, and he's thumbing through, and he goes, I know I got his number here somewhere. So I'm saying, oh, there it is. And he writes number down, tears a page out of the deal, and goes, there you go. Give him a try. And it was the phone number for the Santa house up in North Pole, Alaska. And George spends a lot of time in Alaska and has done everything everywhere, Alaska being the least of which. And so he had the phone number for the Santa house, which is a big toy store at North Pole. and they've got the reindeer out front, and they've got the whole gig. And we get home and we call, and Santa was busy apparently, and you get a recording, and it's Santa, ho ho ho, Merry Christmas! I'm busy packing my sleigh, and Rudolph's doing this, and Mrs. Claus is doing that, and da 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 da. And you guys were set, and you got to leave a message. So you left a message. You waited for the beep, and Santa, we switched to Power Rangers, blah, 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 whatever, I still have that phone number in my phone. I mean, that's 30 years ago. And I still do it all the time. I see little Johnny acting like a rat in the store. Yeah. And I say, we could call Santa Claus and ask him what he thinks of how you're talking to your mom. And he looks at me like, yeah, right. So so I call it and put it on speaker. I've used it 100 times. Yeah. If I've used it once. I use it all the time, and I still do. I've used it a couple, 2-3 times this year already. Yeah, and it's just you get that recording, and it's just hilarious. Yeah, that's absolutely good stuff. And that thing's been around forever. But that was how you and your brother first kind of made contact with Santa. Was George? George just happened to have his phone number. Yeah, George knew him. George knew him. Yeah, he'd been up there a lot. Probably flew him on a couple things, maybe. Or something. For sure. That's awesome. Oh, I've got just a whole life of great memories like that. Yeah. Yeah, and just shoot, not to keep going, but the little galley, right? Like, oh gosh, yeah. Thinking about Christmas, they always had was it the candy cane? Ground up candy canes? Well, that on the cocoa, but remember it was the snowman, I think. And Steve and Lisa might correct me on this, but I think that they had like little snowman ornaments that were all over the galley. And then you could guess how many there were. I remember every time you paid, they did have something that you could guess. And you would write your name and the number and put it in the jar. And that was, for years they did that. Yeah. And I remember that was always a staple. But just what Steve and Lisa did, right, to bring Christmas spirit. They always dressed up. Lisa always had such a festive sweater on. Yep. Her and Mandy would have a Santa hat on, come December, and the lights and the decoration and then just allowing that place of gathering. Like, what's the odds that George is sitting 2 tables down and says that, and those are just those little nuances that I was talking about of like living here that makes it so special. Yeah, exactly. And now as a man at 36, literally just bumped into George at the coffee table, yesterday and chatted with him for 45 minutes, George is like the most interesting guy in the world, like that commercial, those old Dos Equis commercials. And I took my oldest Kendall to a concert last year in Tacoma, and we just dropped into Monroe, into a little coffee shop, and I walk in and there's George Thomas. Same thing, flannel, big hat. He's sitting there having a cup of coffee and a cookie. I run into George in the most random found an airplane spots. Engine in Monroe or something. I look across the street, and there's a big freaking semi truck and a flat deck with a bunch of stuff on it, coming home, and we sat down and had lunch with him, and he says he's coming on. So George, if you're listening to this or Georgia, we got to make it happen. That is the one you need to get some too. George, oh my gosh. I can tell you some George Tom stuff from my youth. Yeah. The first time I ever thought I wanted to drink beer, George Thomas is involved in that. And someday we'll do that one. He and his brother had the garage on Main Street where the skate park is. Okay. And it was basically just a hot rod shop. Yeah. But there's a bunch of stories there. George, you got to get George on. Yeah, for sure. Cool. Well, in closing, thanks to the community. Thank you to the people at Operation Santa that are doing that. And genuinely, Merry Christmas to everyone. And I agree. And keep that holiday spirit alive, going into next year and in the following months, and spend some time with your family and enjoy the time. I agree. And I love that our town looks the part and acts the part. Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. It's true. Cool. Yep. Well, with that, we'll call it, and Merry Christmas, son. Merry Christmas, everyone. Thank you.